Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Gin and Tonic Show on Friday, the 11th of August. I am joined by my co-host, Abu. Good evening, Abu. How are you, my good sir?
I'm fine. I have invested in a height-adjustable desk.
Ah, excellent. I've got one of those. I'm not using it at the moment. How have you found it? Is it for sitting or standing?
Both sitting and standing. I thought it's important that I stand up for the Gin and Tonic Show.
Nice, I like it. Yeah, no, I've got a standing desk. I need to reassemble it. Good evening, Stops. How are you, sir?
Hey, is my microphone working today?
Yes, spot on. It's working extremely well.
Alhamdulillah, I prayed so hard.
You see, sometimes it does work. Sometimes miracles do happen, hey? Although maybe it's just expertise, your natural expertise.
No, it's how an engineer works. You just try and try again until it works.
You've got something going in the background that goes deet a little bit.
Oh, no, that's my...
Oh, is that you, Abu? Oh, okay, cool. Hey, good evening, everybody, to the viewers as well. So what we're going to do today, we've got Abdullah Sameer coming on a little bit later. He'll be here in half an hour. So myself and Stops and Abu will have a little chat. I've got a few comments. One of the things that I want to do now going forward, and if you get any in the comments, please send them to me. I'm going to do a crazy comment section where we can just read some. I've only got a few for this evening, but some crazy comments, certainly on my channel or where I see it elsewhere. And these are not necessarily always Muslims, but primarily Muslim comments that I sort of have a facepalm moment or just think are utterly amusing or absolutely crazy. So,
oh shit! I was supposed to look at my fault. Oh, sorry.
No worries, no worries. We'll definitely do it, more of it in the future anyway. So what I'm going to do is just start with that. Why not? So here we go from one of my regular viewers. Matt is a Muslim. I can't remember which video this was on, but this one I thought was amusing to start us with. The concept of God in Islam is too advanced for this retarded atheist to comprehend. Indeed, they are worse than cattle. And the irony was not lost on me on this comment. I just, as soon as I saw that, there was some comments there. So I don't know if my fellow non-believers here have got anything to say, but I did think that was amusing, ironic, if nothing else.
Do they mean
cattle
that
are atheists too?
Yes, or if you want to be. If you want to be specific with Aussie non-theist, but yes.
Does it mean that cattle can comprehend it more accurately than atheists?
Well, I guess that's the assertion, isn't it?
Okay.
The assertion is yes, that indeed it's the concept of God is just so advanced in Islam that the rest of us, well, self-proclaimed critical thinkers are just not able to comprehend it. I don't know what that says about Muslims. So either they are extremely advanced and they just get it, or that's even more, or even worse for them. I don't know. But yes, I did think that was amusing. On to my next one here. Saracen, our good friend Saracen here, talking about somebody else. Actually, I've ripped Answer a few times on the Atheist Show. I don't remember that, so maybe he's not talking about the show, or I don't know. I do make a DUI when he returns to the deen. I feel he has been atheist mind raped. Maybe I'm being naive. I always think that our prophet gives dawah for Abu Sufyan for 18 years and he finally converts it. Answer has got some vile atheists around him that encourages filth. He also appears to be going through a difficult time in his private life and the atheists are taking advantage of him.
Yeah. I mean, but this is what you need to do. You need to convince yourself of the most incredible bullshit to be able to say, yep, you see, that's how it works. I mean, how does that work? How does a brain do that?
It's also like as if Muslims never take advantage of people's social problems.
Well, again, I'm not entirely sure who's taking advantage of what.
Yeah.
But the fact that he's ripped Ansel so many times, again, it's odd, how people perceive things. But, yeah, so I'm just...
But now, what is happening here? I mean, Ansar is somebody who has shown that he knows how to think, and he's not interested in this God belief, at least not in this particular one. Now, if he has said, I'm not interested in this, I have, gone past it, I've grown up, I've grown out of gods, why would somebody think I make dua? I mean, what does he do? He says, oh, dear God, please make that answer. I mean, this God created Ansar, according to the belief of Saracen, to be an atheist. So this is exactly what God created him for, knowing full well that he is going to be this. And you can't get out of free will here, because at the end of the day, it is what he was created as and for. And either this God knows it or doesn't know. If the God doesn't know that Ansar would be an atheist, then what's the point of being a God? And if he did know that Ansar is going to be a God, well, then Ansar is doing exactly what this God is telling him to do. Then why complain? And if he comes back into the fold, and if he's going to pretend he's going to be a Muslim again, all he's going to do is be critical all the time and demand a reform in Islam. So what he's actually praying for is that God changes his mind, which apparently he's not supposed to be doing. And the second thing is to get somebody back into where he already was, to then create even more shit for Muslims from within. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes I don't think people think it through. Obviously, what Muslims think is that all non-Muslims, all ex-Muslims, either weren't proper Muslims, didn't understand Islam properly, or have deconverted for bad reasons. So I'm guessing those are normally the thing. Whereas on our side of the fence, I wouldn't put you in there unless you guys agree. I just don't think, believers that have looked at it have thought critically enough. Their critical thinking faculties have just not. They've accepted things that they would not accept in any other sphere of life, and they just accept these sort of things.
But Abu and Rob, for that matter, have either one of you ever talked to Ansar in any way to say, well, yes, what you are doing now is much better than what you were doing before, or thank God you have escaped from this mind jail or something? Because I've never said anything about this. I have accepted what he told me, and I have never said, wow, so much better, and thank God. And I've never done that. So can anybody say that we, the atheists, have mind raped someone? Raping somebody means you're doing something to them against their will. Now,
Yes.
what has either one of you ever told him that would constitute anything like rape? I don't get it.
No, it's obviously...
I don't recall that I have said anything like that. But maybe he's not talking about us.
Myself neither, but well, I'm sure he's talking about us. But I've always listened, when they have made the comments. So ex-Muslims, and we'll hear Abdullah come on shortly. They always say it's like waking up from the Matrix or similar thing, or starting to think critically, or whatever the term is that they often use. This comes out of their own mouth. It's not prompting, like, oh, did you? It's not like a leading question. So they've offered it on their own, and so but again, just notice the difference. I want viewers to notice the difference with this. If there was somebody that was thinking, and we know a few people that were thinking about, and deciding, and still are, about whether Islam is true for them, we always say, go speak to everybody, go get all the opinions, think for yourself. And I noticed that the other side of the fence, this is a sort of thing. It's those guys, they're encouraging him. They're doing, quote, bad things to him in some sense. Don't go and speak to them. They're going to confuse you. So they are either very insecure, or they think we have hallucinogenic abilities, which would be nice to have, that we don't actually have. Either way, I think that's a moral point that people should consider. And I don't think it's a moral point in their favor.
The thing is that Muslims live for reward and dread punishment. So what they see is that their only reason to do something is because of something else. They always require this intermediate somehow. And now we are not doing any of that. There is no incentive for anyone to be a non-believer. and there is no punishment for anything if you are a non-believer. So in their mindset, they need to come up with something. That must be a reward, or there must be something. And that's why they say, well, encourage his filth. It's not there. This is, maybe I'm being naive. This is like the Quran taunting, bring a surah like it. Maybe I'm being naive. No, you're not being naive. You're being an ignorant asshole. And this is what I don't understand, why people need to make comments like this. It's like really stupid.
I mean, again, just deal with the person's comments. Now, if he's acting in a certain way, then you are entitled to say, hey, the man is acting like an arse, which I haven't seen personally. If he's in fact, his behavior, his speech indicates that he's doing that. So then it's not an ad hominem or whatever the case is. But just to make comments like this, I'm let's just say at least disappointed in Saracen. But let's move on anyway.
Yeah, but it's a pity that he's not here to comment this, because I'd love to know, number one, how he has ripped Answer even once. And number two, why he would want him to come back. And number three, what is the filth that we are encouraging him with? I'd love to have an example for that.
Yes, yeah, well.
I mean, kufar is talked about like filth. إنما المشركون najas. The people of shirk are filthy, are filth.
Right.
So when
but to be now, I'm always saying, go and criticize away, but do something what is called constructive criticism. Go and show what is better, what could have been done better. And there I say, well, if you would have addressed something factual, and you would have said, well, Answer said this and this, and this is bad, and this demonstrates that he is under the influence of or some bad influence because what he is saying is bad or something, then it's a different story, because then you're being constructive and saying, okay, he could improve by doing X. But like this is just throwing a temper tantrum.
So this is all obviously with Answer's video. By the way, there are plenty of positive comments, but I took the crazy comments, and so please don't let this be representative. It isn't. If you go watch the video with Answer speaking to the Muslim guy, there's plenty of good comments there. So here's another one. Obviously, Answer is a troubled child, heavily influenced by the shaitan, wants to attack the truth with false arguments. Everything has rules. Example, you play rules of football pitch and continue kicking the ball against the wall in the back garden, etc. Wants to attack the truth. Well, yeah, obviously that's just a unsubstantiated statement. So obviously,
that was what I'm supposed to say earlier, but I forgot it. Like they have this idea that shaitan is behind everything. That is a very important thing. When they think about ex-Muslims, they think that, oh, the shaitan fooled him, and Shaitan tells him that he's gonna get this and this and this, and then blah 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 blah. So that's how they think. But it used to be like that, even in Christian countries once upon a time. But
I mean, it's a man-made thing, because obviously, God can only be all good, which is just a bare assertion, and so you've got to have something that's bad, because if there is bad in the world, and if it's not part of God's doing or part of God itself, then it must be something else. So we've got to make up something. And as far as I remember, there wasn't a Satan, was there, in the Old Testament? It only came about in the New Testament. I could be wrong, but I remember reading something like that.
Yep.
So that only came about with gentle Jesus, meek and mild, as some people put it. So moving on, obviously this was all towards that.
Well, there's always something wrong with atheists too. There needs to be something wrong with you before you become a non-believer. This is the funny story as well. Why should there be something wrong with me? No, quite the opposite. It's because I am like using my faculties and using critical thinking. This is exactly why I come to the conclusion, nothing else.
Yes, exactly. I picked this one up somewhere else, which I thought was amusing. So the Darwin theory specialist, may God increase his knowledge. So, I just saw that one. I went, okay, again, the crazy comments. So yeah,
not God increases knowledge. Take him to school. Teachers can increase his knowledge.
Yes, books and actual knowledge we acquire here in the natural world. So there we go. And the final one. There's always got to be one sort of rant. Idiot Rob. Point is that he don't know, but he won't listen, act like he knows everything. Idiot Rob exposed many times, but he still don't get it. Idiot Rob, no wonder you're an idiot. Stop robbing your logic, Rob. Stop being an idiot, Rob. And I just said demonstrable projection. And for those who don't know, it's a psychological sort of saying. your perception, your projection is perception. In other words, whatever you think of somebody else, sometimes that's how you are in some way behaving. So I thought that was obviously the irony on the comment wasn't lost on me. So very, occasionally I'll get I'll say semi-intelligent comment, then I'll respond to it. But these ones are sort of certainly amusing. And sometimes I do hold my head and I go, is this the state of humanity? But then I comfort myself, hopefully, and I'm being perhaps hopeful here that most of humanity wouldn't act this way. But maybe I'm being too charitable on humanity. I don't know.
In the
It's
chat,
almost is that a real comment?
Do you think that there's a button on your keyboard which says caps lock? It's usually on the left in the middle. If you push that, then you get rid of all the capitals and the people can actually read what you are writing. The way that you're writing now, nobody can read it. Thank you.
Yeah. So
Just sort of talk about, you who have believed, indeed the polytheists are unclean. Innamal mushrikuna najas. So I think that's
is
why
that the hadith that you were going to read at the end of the show, or you're going to?
No. This is Qur'an.
Okay. Oh, you who
Sahih
have believed.
International is the translation, not the Sahih, not the authoritative hadith collection.
So that fellow that is now taken off cap lock, I'm not sure what he says. Are you saying negative energy don't exist in your best proof for negative energy? Try and rephrase that. I'm guessing that English isn't your first language, which is fine. But try and rephrase your question there, because that doesn't really make sense.
The best proof for negative energy is if you bring evidence for negative energy. If you cannot bring any kind of evidence for negative energy, there is no negative energy.
Negative energy is just a word. You can say that energy is negative.
Well, energy is just energy. I mean, I guess you could talk about negative energy. In other words, charged particles. You've got a positive and negative charge, perhaps.
But you can switch it around and you can call the other one positive and the other one negative. It works. It just works.
What is an Islam hater? This is quite funny. How do you get from negative energy to Islam hater? This guy seems to have a confusion.
I'm just going to bring a couple of articles here that I thought were interesting. This is in supposedly a reasonably, what would you say, moderate Islamic country. The Deputy Prime Minister, probe underway on Muslims joining Atheist Club. I actually saw this on Facebook, on Sameer's Facebook. And this is Kuala Lumpur. That's Malaysia, isn't it? So basically what happened here, the government's going to investigate if there are Muslims who have joined the Kuala Lumpur Atheist Club. I'm surprised they allow an Atheist Club, but there you go. As made viral on the social media recently, blah, 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 by the Deputy Minister. He stressed on the importance of a detailed investigation to be conducted and urged for the involvement of the Malaysian Communications Commission. According to this fellow, jurisdiction on Islamic faith is under the Sharia criminal enactment of each state. If it be proven that there are Muslims involved in atheist activities that could affect their faith, the State Islamic Religious Department, or JAWA, could take action. I have asked for JAWI to look into this grave allegation, he told reporters. So, and I don't have the picture, unfortunately. It was a picture of sort of a group of atheists that were, there's like a photo looking down and they're all smiling and so forth. And so there may have been some Muslims involved there. So, and this is from our, moderate Malaysian country. So again, dangerous if you're a Muslim. I'm surprised actually that they allow an atheist club, but the fact that they do, and then, if you want to speak to them, because again, we're obviously, what was the word you used, Abu? We're shirk, not shirk. What did you say it was?
Mushrikun.
Mushrikun, thank you.
No, but Malaysia is easy lah. Actually, in KL is quite secular. It's the eastern areas. It's the island which is very let's call it conservative, and there you actually get more of Islamism. In KL, you actually have a female imam. So there it's different.
Okay. Again, the doctrine.
It's like yes, you can take it like compared to Saudi Arabia, but there are many Malaysians that unfortunately are.
I wouldn't be surprised if Saudi is sort of pumping money in this direction. I mean, if you read the bottom of the paragraph,
they are. I know.
He added, the government has also carried out numerous programs to strengthen the faith of Muslims from the school level, apart from departments and religious agencies that collaborate in the planning of programs to instill Islamic values. So doing everything they can.
A friend of mine has 5 strictly pork restaurants, where at the back he has closed dining rooms where the Muslims can go and eat pork if they want to, but without being seen in public. So this is all hush hush, but it's totally hypocritic. Everything is completely under the table.
Just one more here. This one I thought was interesting because you never hear this from Muslims, or they claim it's not the case. Muslim countries have the highest rates of suicide, murder, rape, and mental health problems.
Really? What countries are those?
So let's have a look here. Suicide, murder, rape, and mental health conditions are skyrocketing in a stretch of Muslim-majority countries from Morocco to Pakistan, many of which have been racked by violence and conflict. Let's bring this up a little further. A major study covering data from the last 25 years shows soaring rates of death by suicide or at the hands of others. In 2015 alone, the last year for which data was used, around 30,000 people committed suicide, while 35,000 were murdered. The figures do not include deaths in places which are at war, such as Syria and Iraq, and represent increases of 100% and 152% respectively since 1990. The study was conducted by the University of Washington's Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluation. In other parts of the world during the same time, the number of deaths from suicide increased to 19% and interpersonal violence by 12%.
You know, one thing that, there is, if I remember this correctly, the more educated a population becomes, the more likely it is that they commit suicide. If I remember this correctly, it's
not necessarily. No, it's not necessarily the more educated. It's the thing that I heard was that it's among high earners, so people that earn more potentially have got a higher risk of suicide. So because there's more pressure in the job.
I have a vague memory that there are like suicide studies. You can go on the YouTube. If I remember this correctly, like that most like causes of death decrease the more highly educated you are, except suicide. It increases, if I remember this correctly.
Yeah, have a look and see if you can find something on that.
It's also about Jews, I think, also the same, that Jews are kind of, or Ashkenazi Jews are less likely to commit crime, blah, 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 I don't know what it was, or less likely to, I remember all this stuff, but you can look it up. There are interesting suicide studies on.
But you see, success is normally measured by, monetary value. And of course, what I notice is that most people, and I'm not by any stretch perfect, but most people haven't had some kind of psychological education. So you can earn a lot of money, but if your brain is giving you bad information, or the way you perceive, quote, problems, is in a negative way, then and some people obviously do that at a very high level. I know of people, or I know of people's stories that have been what we would consider very successful. You got a good life, earning plenty of money, and like you say, have committed suicide. But that's a psychological, I would consider it a bug in the workings of the brain that tells them, because we all have a little voice in some sense. It's not necessarily like some people it's schizophrenic, where you actually, the voice is talking to you, but other people it's just your actions, which you could translate into a voice that you normally do, your default behavior. And so, some of that is, that should be in school. Like, how do you have psychological education to help people deal with conflict, problems, whatever you want to call it? Because successful people, when they have, quote, a problem, their mindset is set in such a way to deal with it in an extremely positive way. So problems are just things that they overcome. For most of us, we can get what seems like insurmountable problems. But if you watch or pay attention to successful people, that's not the case.
That's why I am such a fan of Stoicism. I like to read Stoic philosophers and so on. I know that this might be a little contradicting, because you say that you also read Nietzsche. And Nietzsche was very like pro-passions and so on. But I think you can combine them in a good way.
Maybe you could do a show.
But I definitely think that Stoicism is, on the other hand, the Stoic philosophers Epictetus, he wrote like in a kind of creepy way, like the door is open. So you can, but
what does that mean?
He means that you can at any time you can just commit suicide if things get too hard. So don't worry. The door is open.
True, and I think that's even more true potentially for religious people, because yes, it's a test of life here, but if things get really too tough, well, I'll escape and go to heaven. Although I guess it's Christianity. I don't know about Islam. Maybe you can tell me. Christianity frowns on suicide, so perhaps the message
is
hell, because you've got to suffer.
It's even if you are a Muslim and you commit suicide, I think at least Muhammad ibn Salih al-Uthaymeen says that you become a kafir by committing suicide.
Yeah, so it's a way out to stop people, because obviously you can see the appeal. If life is going badly for you, and that if you're a believer you can go to heaven, then more people will do it. So they had to find a way to stop that. And so obviously from what you're saying in Islam, and I know Christianity says something similar, that no, you can't do that. Hence people have got to suffer. And of course, Mother Teresa, I saw an article again on her recently, was a great believer in suffering. So she didn't cure the poor, she didn't help the poor really, she just allowed them to suffer longer, whereas they could have gone to, and there's so many accounts of this, it's unbelievable.
It's a bit the same in Islam, like not that you should inflict suffering on yourself maybe, but, in Shia Islam you can do that, but that you should have sabr and blah 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 blah.
Yeah, I just want to finish a little bit of this here. In the middle there, the research showed that the wars in Yemen, Iraq and Syria are in particular are taking the severe toll on the health of the population. Well, no kidding, in a war-torn country that would happen. Not only are the effects immediate in terms of death and injury, but these events lead to increased health burden in the future of the next generation. It's being raised under the harsh conditions of malnutrition and lack of preventative health services. Yemen has the highest proportion of its population suffering from food insecurity at 36%. So,
that's also something you can say that, war can be quite nasty, or it's probably one of the nastier things you can experience. So, people with PTSD commit suicide way more often than average population.
Yes, so I just thought it was interesting that that there was some there was an article on that, because you never sort of hear that, because obviously the blurb that I get at Speaker's Corner is no. If we could just implement Sharia in the right way, all the Muslim countries around the world just haven't done it in the right way, but you do it in my way, or the right way in inverted commas, we'd have the best society in the world. That's the implication that I hear. And you'll forgive me if I'm totally unimpressed. The track record doesn't say that or even suggest that in any remote way. And when I listen to their quote, best way, I am even more or even less convinced. And our democracies and stuff are not perfect by any stretch. There's a lot of things we can improve, but my word, and this bears it out anyway. Just go to the Good Country Index. Let me get it up again. One of my favorite things.
Look, one thing, I actually think that if you would implement Sharia in a country, like I think the level of education would probably decrease radically, and uneducated people, if I remember this correctly, tend to commit suicide less often. So maybe it has some positive effect in that way. I don't know.
But I wouldn't suggest that's the case.
On the other hand, a lot of people are going to die in jihad because they have to conquer the surrounding countries.
Here's my go-to. See, here's a real-world example anyway. And so here's the Good Country Index, and this rates countries by obviously overall on the index on down the bottom left-hand side here, but then it's science and technology, culture, international peace and security, world order, planet and climate, prosperity and equality, health and well-being. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 metrics that are used to judge a country. And as we scroll down here, we look on the left side, obviously we've got the Nordic countries, dominating. There's the UK at number 4. Finland is the lowest of the 3, but Sweden, Denmark typically right up there, and normally Finland's a bit higher. So
What happened to Norway? Why are they so low?
Norway's down at 13. So as we scroll down here, just for interest, it's all Europe and Scandinavia. Curiously, there's Australia coming in at 18. The United States comes in at 20. So even though it's majority religious, curiously, it still comes in the top 20. You would think that it would come in the top 10, but clearly it doesn't. And by the look of it,
but what are they? How are they measuring this? Because I'm a little bit skeptical.
So obviously, where it seems to be lower is in international peace and security. By the look of these things, so the more it's to the right, the better it is. Prosperity and equality is also lower potentially, although Australia's got a lower one. So it would be interesting to see culture as well. So,
but I don't understand, how do they measure this?
Well, obviously there's some kind of a measurement, and then they're adding all of these 7 criteria together to give you an index of where does the countries fall relative to each other based across these 7 metrics. And so all I want to do is go down.
I'm a little bit skeptical. I mean, you can, depending on how you tweak.
What are you skeptical about? Do you think that some way one of the countries here is not represented accurately in some way? Or
no, but I would, for example, when I saw that Norway was on 13th place, I think Norway is a better country than Sweden. It's better to be. If I had to choose, if I could, like, like a Buddhist, they believe in reincarnation. If I had to choose between being born in Norway or in Sweden, I would definitely choose Norway.
Yeah, but I mean, I would ask you, I won't ask you where you are, but I would ask you that's probably your anecdotal evidence. So what they're doing is looking at the country as a whole, probably getting a lot of reports, because then I doubt they're going to individual people and saying, what do you think on these 7 criteria? I mean, that's just a random thing. So it's probably studies that are being done in each country. So you may have a personal opinion that Norway's better, and it may be for a particular thing that you like, but I'm not sure that you could say that overall, and that's what the balance is here overall. And it looks like they are not so good in international peace and security. Again, one would have to look at exactly what that is. But what I did want to do is just go down here a little bit further down, see where does the first Muslim majority country come in, just for interest. Is it Moldova? I'm not sure. Is Moldova a Muslim majority country or Muslim ruled country?
Don't think
I'm not
so.
sure. It may be.
Normally, I also don't know.
But normally
Croatia has some
Malaysia. So Malaysia is your top, apart from
Malaysia
is coming in at 42.
Yeah, but Malaysia still has a secular government. Remember this, so-called. Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, it's creeping Sharia there, as we've seen anyway. And so where the two there's conflict, then the secular government gives way to the Sharia government. So Malaysia comes in there. Interesting, Israel down at 44.
That is probably because of
the international peace and security driver is extremely low there. So it's just interesting. So I'll post it in the chat for people who are interested to go, and I'll put it here as well. But that's always interesting to have a look at. There's real world examples, and again, when, like you say, you can challenge it, no doubt about that. But I don't think there's many human beings in the world that would challenge, let's say, the top 5 countries, let's say, give or take. And maybe you could challenge Norway, for example, but generally speaking, the Nordic countries, Europe and the UK, generally speaking.
I like to make that test. Like, if you, like in Buddhist, they think that you're going to be reborn somewhere. So if you like, what country would you like to be reborn in, and what country would you least like? If I would choose one country that I don't want to be born in, for example, that is North Korea. That is a bad choice. And if I had to choose one country, I don't know, but maybe Liechtenstein, maybe.
Let's just see, where does North Korea actually come in? By the way,
there's a small community of Muslims in Moldova, numbering several thousand. In March 2011, the Islamic League, and so representing Moldova's Muslims, was registered by the Moldovan Justice Ministry as the first legally recognized Muslim association in Moldova. It had applied for registration in 2008. So the Moldovan Orthodox Church opposed the recognition of Islam and joined protests with conservative groups. So there you go.
Welcome.
So it's not.
Hello.
There you are. Good evening. How are you, Abdullah?
Good. How's it going?
Yeah, good, man. Good to have you on. Thank you so much. I know you've only got an hour with you. It was more of an open topic, but there were a couple of things that caught my attention. Obviously, I have my two panelists, so I'm sure we can easily spend an hour and longer with you and get your thoughts on some things. But before we do, how are you, sir? Are you well? Anything to tell us from your side?
I'm good, thank you. How's the sound quality? Is it okay?
Yeah, you're coming through well. Are you on computer or your phone?
I'm on my phone with a new headset, so I just wasn't sure of the quality. Okay, it's good. That's wonderful to hear.
No, you're coming through clearly. Any news on your side? Have you had anything that obviously we don't hear that much from Canada? So is there any interesting news, from your side that you'd share with us before we get going?
No, I don't have any updates from my end, actually. Not really.
Okay, that's unusual. Hopefully a good thing.
Yeah, I've just been busy with work and stuff, and kind of had my head down and not really paying much attention, I guess, to what's going on in the world.
Sometimes that's a good thing.
Yeah. Yes, it is.
Cool. Well, thank you so much again for coming on. There was something that caught my attention in Speaker's Corner recently, and I wanted to get your view on it, and obviously we'll get Abu and Stops' view as well.
Right.
There was a particular Muslim in Speaker's Corner. I'm looking for the video. I can't play it with sound anyway. I've got a fiddle to get sound working, but there was a view here by what I think a lot of Muslims will consider a reasonably intelligent Muslim. He's a convert here in the UK, and his view was that Muhammad has never ordered or taken the life of any innocent man, woman, child, priest, etc. And I was wondering what your thoughts, and I know there's going to be a few things there. I wondered what your thoughts were on that claim that Muhammad has never done it to, quote, innocent people. He didn't mention men, obviously, but no women, children, priests, etc.
Right. So there's quite a few, actually, people that he would have killed that I would have considered unjust. There's a page called Wiki Islam, which was made by ex-Muslims. And on Wiki Islam, if you look up list of deaths ordered by Muhammad, there's a whole bunch of them. And some of them include slave girls. So the slave girl one is the most troubling to me because, they're not really in charge of their own autonomy. They're pretty much doing what they're told to do, So these slave girls, apparently they made some poetry against the Prophet. And so I guess they were ordered to be killed. And I'm not sure if both of them were killed, or one was killed and one was forgiven or something, or she repented. There's other examples as well, but whenever you bring up any sort of examples like this, it's always disputed. Like the other example is Ka'b ibn Ashraf. So the story of Ka'b goes as follows. Like this guy, supposedly, he was half Jewish, half Arab, and he was a very good-looking guy, and he was very popular, and he was writing poetry against the Prophet. And so Muhammad asked his companions, he said, who will get rid of this enemy of Allah, or something like that, for me, right? So one of his companions came up to him and said, I'll do it, but will you permit us to lie, like to deceive, right?
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, go ahead, you can lie. So then, they went up to this guy and they told him, come, we're your old friends and we just want to see you. It's been a long time, good old buddies, And he was nervous, but he came out and they killed him. And that was the end of Ka'b ibn Ashraf. Now, Muslims will justify and they say, well, he was making poetry against Muslim women. So he was insulting Muslim women and saying this one is a slut or something. And I don't know, like basically they justify it. They justify the use of this political assassination on the grounds that he was making some sort of poetry. So I don't know what you think about that, but I don't see how making poetry, and then they'll also say that, he was instigating war against the Muslims. So, whatever example you give, it's kind of like, but this and but that. And so I don't really get into examples like that, but I do like the example. I mean, I don't like the example of him killing slave girls. That just seems like there's almost no reason you should ever do that because they're slaves, right? They're just doing what they're told to do. So it doesn't make sense to kill a slave girl. And there's other examples as well. For example, was it the foster brother of Uthman, and his name was Abdullah ibn Abi Sar. Abdullah ibn Abi Sar was one of the people that Prophet Muhammad said, if you find him, kill him even if he's holding on to the cloth of the Kaaba. So the Kaaba, which is this ancient house of, idolatry, now monotheism, is known as, the most sacred place in the world to the Arabs, the pre-Islamic Arabs and the Muslims.
Yeah.
So this is like the holy, the sanctified ground. Even the word Masjid al-Haram or Masjid al-Haram, it means forbidden. It's like sacred, right? So even in this place, he said, even if they're holding on to the cloth of the Kaaba, like kill them, right? Like that's what he was saying, right? And because these guys are enemies of Allah, supposedly. So whatever pre-Islamic values they had, even the good ones, they would just throw them out the window when it came to Muhammad and his deciding arbitrarily what was now the new law, right? So a lot of these pre-Islamic values were just thrown out the window because he deemed it now that this is now appropriate to kill. So anyways, so this guy, Abdullah ibn Abi Sar, he ran away, and he was one of the people that used to write the revelation of Muhammad. So he used to write the revelation of Muhammad, and according to the story, he apostated because when he was writing the story says that he was writing Muhammad's revelation from God, and then this guy said, like a lot of the verses in the Quran end with like As-Sami'ul Alim, like the one that hears everything and knows everything, or Arhamur Rahim, one of the names and attributes of Allah. So Muhammad mentioned whatever the attribute was, like Al-Wahid or Al-Qahar or whatever, and then Abdullah was like, well, actually, it sounds, maybe it should be more like, and he mentioned another name of Allah, like the great Al-Aziz Al-Hakim or something, right? The great and mighty. So then Muhammad said, so write that instead. So he did, and then he's like, whoa, either I'm a prophet or he's not a prophet. Which one is it, right? So he apostated from Islam, and he was one of the ones that Muhammad said, kill him no matter what. Right? Like this guy cannot be forgiven, right? So what ended up happening, sorry, I'm going on and on, I'll just finish my story quickly. So what ended up happening with Abdullah ibn Abi Sar is he ran away and he hid his face. And then he came back with Uthman, because Uthman was the beloved. He was very close to Muhammad because he helped Muhammad a lot. He donated, he was like a millionaire in today's terms, according to the official story. And he donated like caravans and caravans and caravans of wealth to Muhammad to fight his jihad, right? To fight his battles. Yeah. So he was considered like one of the 10 Mubashirin, Ashar al-Mubashirin, one of the 10 promised paradise by Muhammad, well, by Allah, I guess, but through Muhammad. So this guy, this was his foster brother. So they were like tight. So he came up, he uncovered his face right in front of Muhammad, and he's like, I bear witness there's no God but Allah. And Muhammad, by Muhammad's own laws, they cannot kill anyone that accepts Islam. So, and the Prophet, and he asked the Prophet to give him his allegiance, right? And Muhammad was just standing there, and he didn't do anything. And so then it's like now awkward, right? Like what's going to happen? The guy's like, there's a death warrant on his head, yet he's standing there and nobody's doing anything. So he said it again, and then eventually Muhammad accepted him and said, okay, fine, right? Now the funny thing is, after he left, listen to this. This is hilarious. Muhammad asked his companions, "Why didn't you guys kill him?" Like that's what he asked them, right? And they're like, "Why didn't we kill him? Like, why didn't you like wink with your eyes, right? Like wink, wink, stab him in the back, right? Like that, right?" Oh no, not befitting for a prophet to wink to kill people. So it's not befitting to, wink, wink, stab him in the back. That's not appropriate for a prophet. But like, sending assassins in the middle of the night to lie to people and murder them, that's okay. So anyways, that's just some examples. I went on for a little bit too long, so that's the stories.
Yes, I've got the link open. I've posted it in our chat here and also
Awesome.
in the main chat, and it shows up to 43 now. That's probably different instances, but there may be more than one person involved. Having a look there.
Yeah, some of them are maybe disputed, and there's different things, but I mean it's a pretty big list. So if you don't like one of the examples, like, some people have told me, like, the first one on the list is disputed by, scholars or whatever, because there's multiple narrations and one narration has this and the other narration has that. So if someone doesn't like one example, okay, fine, there's another 42 examples. Just carry on, there's lots of them.
Yes, I guess the main point is that he wasn't a completely passive and innocent guy, even when people weren't attacking. But that's what I hear a lot. I always hear Muslims going, no, the only time you can take a life is when you're attacking. But it's easy to make up that you're being attacked. It could be that you're being attacked verbally or psychologically. It's not necessarily somebody's got a sword ready to kill you, is it? So that's another thing.
Right. Can I add one more example? So I have one more example, actually, that just came to mind, which is the dying wish of Muhammad was to send Osama bin Zaid. Osama was his beloved grandson, and Zaid is, his son, his adopted son that he married his wife. So this is his grandson, Osama, who he loved. His dying wish was to send Osama bin Zaid to fight the Romans. So this was like an offensive jihad. This isn't like a defensive jihad, right? And I mean, you can argue it was, proactive, so they wouldn't be attacked back or something, or, there's some history behind why he did that. But clearly Islam is not a pacifist religion. The whole point of the jihad was to spread the border, increase the borders, convert more people to Islam. I mean, the whole point of jihad, if you read what the scholars say, is it's dawah. So, you're telling people either you accept Islam, and if you do, then you become part of the Islamic State, and we won't fight you, but you have to pay your zakat, which is 2.5%, but back then it wasn't just 2.5%, but it was also, if you had goats, you had to give you have to give like a certain percentage of goats and certain percentage of your camels and certain percentage of this and that. So you become part of the Islamic Empire. Otherwise, you have to either fight or pay the jizya. So it's considered that jihad is part of the dawah because it spreads the religion in the world. And clearly Muhammad's goal, and it's in the Quran, it's not just a hadith, it's in the Quran that, fight those that until there's no more fitna and the religion is only for Allah. And, the Quran talks about how I will make, I will liyudhirahu ala dini kulli. It'll become, this religion will become manifest over all other deens, all other ways of life, right? So this religion, when you have people like Salafis, it becomes easy for them to jump into jihadism because it's so clear in the Quran that the point of Islam is not just, praying 5 times a day, and it's not just going to the mosque on Friday, but it's political and it's very nature. I mean, that's how I understood it anyways. And to me, it seemed pretty clear that the religion is all about expansion. And, now you have scholars like Hamza Yusuf, we will say, no, we don't have to fight anymore. But like the Quran itself says these things, right? So to me, it's hard to argue that Islam is a pacifist religion. Like it's not.
It's kind of funny, like you mentioned that on his deathbed he said, go and fight the Romans. If the Muslim narrative is correct and that Muhammad only hung around in Medina and Mecca, since that wasn't part of the Roman.
Try that again, Abu. We lost you there.
No, I heard what he said. He was saying that it wasn't on, like the Roman Empire was far, far away. Like it wasn't even close to the borders of the Muslim Empire.
Yeah, I don't think
that's correct. That's correct.
Yeah,
you're correct about that. I think what happened was there's a bit of a backstory to it, right? Like there was some sort of skirmish between the Muslims and the Romans, and of course, Muhammad, when he was, as the story goes, and I keep saying as the story goes because I don't necessarily know how much of the stuff is really true, but this is what Muslims accept. So it's a fair and reasonable, it makes sense to use these points because they believe it, and that's the basis of the belief. So we can use these points. But as the story goes, in the Battle of the Trench, in the Battle of Khandaq, Prophet Muhammad, of course, I'm sure there's a lot of over-exaggeration to this because that's how these type of myths grow and legends, myths become legends, right? So, nobody could break this giant rock, right? There was this giant rock, nobody could break it. So they called Muhammad, of course, he's a superstar here, and he's like, Allahu Akbar, and he hit the rock, right? And he hit it 3 times, and every time he hit it, they saw a flash of lightning. And when they saw a flash of lightning, he's like, Sham will be conquered, and which is like, all of Persia and Syria. And then he's like, this place will be, I forget what he mentioned, but he mentioned a bunch of places. Qatra the Persians and then Sham, and then so even back then, when they were like in a crisis situation, they were surrounded by enemies on every side. Muhammad was dreaming about, you know, conquering the world, right? Like I will own this and I will own that, and so yeah, it's pretty clear, I think.
Here is one of the verses that you were talking about. Fight them until
Yes.
there is no more fitna. And they translated weirdly. And until worship is, but in Arabic it's وَيَكُونُ الدِّينُ لِلَّهِ. So, and the religion becomes for Allah. Religion in like the religion.
Yes. And I guess I should clarify here, because I mean, that's beautiful that you actually showed that on the screen. That's awesome. I should just clarify that, you know, clearly majority of Muslims don't necessarily believe this means that we have to go as individual Muslims living in the West, let's say, as minorities, to start going and fighting individual non-Muslims or chopping off their heads or something. That's clearly not what I understood as a Muslim. My understanding was, if there's an Islamic state, Islamic government, then it would be its duty to, you know, if they needed to, then they could do jihad. Like, so this is not an individual, as I understood as a Salafi Muslim, this is not an individual commandment. This is a commandment that is on the community and on the rulers of the community. So if there's a sultan or an amir, a caliph, that he would be the one who would call for jihad. You can't have individuals calling for jihad. But then again, like anything else in religion, you can argue that. But I just wanted to make that clear, that the dominant Islamic position as to jihad,
so
it's not individuals, it's a leader.
Well, it depends on, like, there is like Fard Kifaya and Fard Ain.
Yes, exactly, Fard Kifaya.
Tell us what that is, guys.
So like Fard Kifaya is like enough people have to do it. So not all people. It's a bit like okay, I can explain in this case. Like, okay, so if a country is, if I'm say that Saudi Arabia would be attacked by kuffar, then it would be fard ain for everybody to fight the kuffar, if that is what it takes to not be occupied, or whatever you call it. Mm-hmm. However, if Saudi Arabia, like if the Imam decides that, okay, there's a country here that are bordering us, and they are not Muslims, so we should attack them to spread the dawah. Okay, in that offensive war, it's fard kifaya, but only those men who is needed for that warfare. It's fard on them, but not for every single person.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's Islamic jurisprudence, where basically there's certain things in Islam that some people have to do, and if somebody does it, it relieves the burden for everybody. For example, the Islamic funeral prayer, somebody has to do it. And if nobody does it, then it becomes obligatory on everybody until somebody does it. So that's the distinction he was trying to make there about Fard Kifaya and Fard Ain. So defensive jihad is considered Fard Ain. Everybody has to defend themselves if they're attacked, the Islamic State empire. But like Fard Kifaya would be like, you know, as long as some people are doing jihad, then everybody's kind of free from that burden of offensive jihad. And again, like, because this is like a scholarly topic, I'm sure like Muslim scholars will go on back and forth and they'll argue about this and that. There's no real clear-cut, you know, way to understand anything in religion. I mean, it's kind of like your word against mine and how you interpret things, and you know what I mean? Like, you can't say for sure one position is right and one position is wrong. And to me, one of the most clear examples of this is the moon sighting. Like when the Prophet Muhammad said, when you see the moon, you know, start fasting, and then when you see the moon again after 29 days, stop fasting. Now, what does that mean? See the moon. Does that mean I have to see it with my naked eye? Does that mean that someone in the community sees it? Anyone in the world sees it? And because there's no way to resolve this, because he's not here to tell us what he meant, you have all different opinions now. You have one opinion that says, if you sight the moon in your locality, then you start fasting the month of Ramadan, and then again at the end you stop. The other opinion is, no, we'll go by Makkah, because Makkah is a holy city and that's what we have to go for Hajj, so we'll use their opinion. And then there's a third opinion that says we'll go by a moon sighting anywhere in the world. and then that's how we start the moon. That's how we start the month. So there's actually in my own family, I have one person who goes by local sighting, and then I have another person who goes by Saudi Arabia, and so you have different people fasting different days. Nobody even knows if Ramadan is today or tomorrow. Half of them think it started today, the other half thinks it starts tomorrow, and there's no way to answer this, because just like everything else in religion, it's just about like how you interpret it. What did he mean by that? And so that's the problem, right? I mean,
but there is I would say that it's something like set theory. So you can have like the larger set of Islam, which contains all the possible sets of Islam, but then you have like, you can, for example, say that Islam says that you should not fast in Ramadan. That is not within the set of it. So yes, there are ikhtilafats in like specific things, but you can like
that's true. I would agree with that. There's definitely stronger and weaker positions in the religion, and clearly like some progressive Muslims want to make it sound like basically anything is allowed, right? And that obviously doesn't make sense either. So yeah, I agree with you. Set theory makes sense.
So I want to ask you something different, Abdullah, just on what you said there, to whatever degree you're open and able to chat about that. Well, what's the impact with your family? How do you obviously by the sounds of it, a number, if not most of them are still Muslim and you aren't. How does that work for you?
So when talking about my family, we have my parents. My parents are very liberal, and honestly, that's something I'm very thankful for. Is when I actually converted from the Ismaili religion to Sunni Islam back when I was 18. My family, my mom is Sunni Muslim, like mainstream Muslim, but my dad was Ismaili, which is like this kind of heterodox sect in Islam, which many people would consider them not to be Muslims even. And I used to consider that as well when I converted. But anyways, I converted.
What is the huge difference here? Sorry, Sameer, can you just quickly, just in a nutshell, explain the difference?
Yeah, sure. So Ismaili is a sect from the Shia. There's about 10 million people, maybe, if I'm getting that right, in the world. So it's not a large sect. But the Ismailis follow a living imam by the name of, or by the title of the Aga Khan. The Aga Khan literally means the King of Kings. Okay, so it's a pretty, like he has one of the names of God almost, right? And he's basically, he considers himself to be the descendant of Ali ibn Abi Talib, the cousin of the Prophet. So Shias, they hold in esteem the 12 imams of which are basically all the relatives, all of them are relatives and descendants of Ali, starting from Ali and then Hussein, and it goes down the line, right? So now Shias, they stop at number 12, Imam al-Mahdi, and Imam al-Mahdi is in a cave in Iraq hiding somewhere, right? And he's going to come out on the Day of Judgment. I think he's in a cave in Iraq. Anyway, so he's hiding in a cave and he's going to come out on the Day of Judgment. So they're waiting for Imam Mahdi to come back and to save the world, right? Now, the Ismailis, they broke off from the majority. So those are called the Twelvers, the Ithnasharis, 12ers, which means they believe in 12 imams. And and that's the majority of Shias, by the way. And then the Ismailis broke off from them. They became Bohras, that's another sect. And then from the Bohras, they split and they became Ismailis. The Ismailis believe that chain has continued till this day. So till this day, the Imam, his name is Shah Karim al-Husseini. You can Google him. He lives in Switzerland. He used to be in Switzerland. He used to be married to a model, but then they got divorced. So it's considered that Aga Khan, he's the spiritual leader of the Ismailis. And when he dies, it'll be his son and then his son. Anyways, so they've completely changed the religion. They've made it very modern. They don't pray the salah or the namaz anymore. They don't pray 5 times a day. They pray 3 times a day their own prayer called the Holy Dua, which was written by Aga Khan. And they don't believe in hijab, so women don't wear hijab. They don't believe in zakat, so they don't pay zakat. They don't believe in hajj, so they don't go for hajj. Although some Ismailis do go for hajj, but I don't think it's one of the tenets of Ismailism per se. Instead, what they do is they pay 1/8 of the gross income directly to Aga Khan. Okay? So
That's
he gets
so rich.
1/8 of all of the income of all of these 10 million Ismailis or so in the world that choose to pay it, although it's not an option. Like my dad used to tell me that when you pay this, things will go well in your life. When you don't pay, things won't go well in your life. And I was like, really? He's like, yeah. So he's like, I always pay. And he used to have an envelope in his house, every time he got paid, he would take out like $500 or whatever it was, 1/8 of his gross income, put it in an envelope, cash, and then every week he would go to the Jamaat Khana, which is a Ismaili mosque, and he would drop the envelope, cash, into the mosque, into the temple or whatever you want, Jamaat Khana. And this is one of the forms of the income. So this is Ismailism. Ismailism is, we don't go by the Quran, we go by this man, Aga Khan. On top of it, they pray to Aga Khan. So it's like a pope, right? They actually, but not just that, they actually pray to him and they ask him to forgive. He's like an intercessor between them and Allah. So when I found out about this, actually, when I started reading the Quran, I was like, whoa, this goes against the Quran. The Quran says, La tushriku bi shay'a, like don't commit shirk, don't associate partners with God. Right? And then I'm like, well, this is weird because that's what Ismailis are doing. So I actually left that. That's why I say it's almost like a different religion. It's so different from Sunni Islam that I used to consider like a different religion. So I converted from that religion to Sunni. And then, you know, when I converted, my family was very liberal. Ismailis tend to be liberal. They integrate well in society. Like I said, they don't have any concept of jihad, anything like that. They're all about, you know, being good neighbors and doing a lot of charity and going to the mosque. It's like a very like modern version, watered down version of Islam, you could say, right? So what happened was I converted because when I read the Quran, I'm like, well, this doesn't match what the Quran says, and I don't want to go to hell forever because that's what God says. He's not going to forgive, you know, shirk. So I converted, but my family was very understanding. My dad was very liberal, and he's like, just however you want to pray to God, just pray to God. So, you know, I'm like, yeah, okay, this looks cool, and this Quran seems cool, and I want to be on God's good side. And I wasn't too critical about it. I just accepted it. So then that's the path I went down. At the time, my brother also converted. I have one younger brother. He followed me in my footsteps. I convinced him as well. My dad never converted. He was just like, no, you know what? Religion is about blind faith to him. He used to say, I believe blindly, and that's it. It just makes sense to me. He was more like a cultural Ismaili. He wasn't exactly very religious, but he did used to believe in God a lot. So he was cool with it. My mom was cool. She doesn't care. I mean, she doesn't mind. But now the same thing when I left Islam completely, when I found out that there's problems in the Quran, it doesn't match the word of God, what God would have really said. I told my family. My mom was okay with it. She was like, yeah, it's okay. You know, you can. If you don't want to believe in God, that's fine, but I think you should believe in God because God, you know, he helps us when we need him. And I'm like, well, I don't believe that, but I don't believe anyone's out there listening. But she was like, okay, it's no problem, it's your choice. My younger brother, unfortunately, he's basically what I used to be, and he's a very strict Muslim, and you know, he was very disappointed and very unhappy that I left Islam, and he doesn't want to talk about it with me. He doesn't want to discuss it, so I don't discuss it with him. We don't discuss it. He blocked me on Facebook. You know, he basically doesn't want to discuss it. It's just, yeah, you chose to be a disbeliever. It's your choice. Just don't bring me into it. I don't want to know why. Like, that's it, right? So that was kind of sad. And the rest of my family, they're kind of like moderate Muslims. They're not really religious, and so they were like, okay, whatever. They know I'm not Muslim, and they're like, okay with it, I guess. They're disappointed. Like, my auntie started crying, and you know, she's like, she came to my house and she's like, why are you going from one extreme to another? You were Salafi, now you're atheist, and you're just going from one extreme to another. I'm like, no, because I was following it to the full amount because that's what I believe to be true. And that's what I thought God wanted from us. Like, why wouldn't you want to be on God's good side if God is real? Would you just want to go halfway and say, I don't really care what you think, even though you created me, and I don't really give a crap what you think about me. I'm just going to do what I feel like doing. No, I wanted to do it properly because I wanted to go to paradise, right? And I wanted to be a good person, and I wanted to be the best person I could be. And now I don't see the reason to believe, so I'm atheist. It's not an extreme. There's just no evidence for Islam, right? But she was crying, and I was like, I started laughing, and I couldn't help it because it sounds so funny that someone's crying. It's like, you know, it's like your kids are crying because Santa Claus is not coming, right? And you might start laughing when they start crying because you find it so funny that they're actually, you know, sad that this imaginary person is not coming. Just the same reason she was crying that I'm going to go to this imaginary hell. I couldn't help but laugh because it was like, I felt sad for her. Like, you're so stuck in this thing that you actually believe I'm going to be burned alive. So yeah, thankfully my family is very liberal, very understanding, very moderate in a sense. And for the most part, I haven't had any problems. The vast majority of Muslims are not in this situation, which is why it's so difficult for people to come out, you know? It's so difficult for people to come out because they lose their family members, they lose their wife, they lose their kids. It's just a disaster if they come out. So I understand why people don't want to come out, right? I understand that they'll be shunned by their families, they'll be shunned by the community. And in my case, well, you know what, my family is accepting of it. My wife was okay with it eventually, so I could do it. But I understand if other people can't do it. Like, stop spamming. He mentioned to me that, where he lives, it can be a danger for him to mention that. And many people I know, I'd say the vast majority, 99% of ex-Muslims I know are in the closet for that very reason.
That's a very, very, very important point that you are making there, because I always maintain, because I see reality, I see everyday life, and I see that my colleagues are not good Muslims, okay? But they will never admit it. They will run to the mosque on a Friday because it is expected of them. It's the peer pressure that they have. It's society pressures, but they're not Muslims. And this is the funny thing, and this is why there are so many atheists in Saudi Arabia, but people are not allowed to admit it because they're being labeled as terrorists. So you're raising an excellent point here. Yeah.
Can I just say one more thing? The thing is, though, this is something that really surprised me. A lot of those people that are not religious Muslims are still Muslim. And what I mean by that is
Cultural.
I almost expected, but not just that. Like, ideologically, they still subscribe to Islam, even though they don't follow anything. And this shocked me because when I left Islam, I have a whole bunch of friends who are like not religious Muslims. Like some of my cousins, for example, like, and some of my friends, they drink and they're like almost 0% Muslim. Like you wouldn't even know they're Muslim except they go to a mosque once in a while. And when I told them Islam is false, and I said I found out the religion is false, I would have thought, well, they'd be like, wow, that's cool, I want to join you, right? But it wasn't like that. It was totally different. They're like, wow, I feel sad for you. I was like, what? And they're like, yeah, I used to look up to you. I wanted to be like you. You were the one I wanted to be like, and now you just left the religion. And I was like, what the hell is going on here? I'm scratching my head. And then I realized, just like those jihadi terrorists in France, that they're going to the pub, they're having a pint, and then they're going Allahu Akbar, and they're shooting down people and ramming down people with trucks. These guys are still ideologically connected to Islam. Right? So it's weird. It's like I could never be that type of person because if you believe in it, you do it. You don't believe, but there's people that they're in a very weird, twisted position. And I've heard from a friend who lives in California that he got like, I never got death threats in person. All my death threats have been online, which I can kind of safely ignore. But this guy got death threats in person for something he did online. He made a video against the Prophet, and his community, the Afghan community, didn't take it very well. And they all know him, right? They knew who he was in the video. Like, he actually heard from a family member that they threatened they're going to beat the shit out of him for his video. So he delisted his video. But these are the same guys that they drink alcohol and so, Muslims will say, yeah, see what I mean? These are not true Muslims. They drink alcohol and they do this and do that. And these are the guys making these threats. But that's not the point. The point is they're still motivated by Islam. They're not motivated by any other reason to hurt this guy, except their religious sensibilities were offended. And Muhammad himself did the same thing, killing people that offended him, right? Insulted him. So the problem with Muslims is they wanna strawman these people and say these guys have nothing to do with Islam. But they have everything to do with Islam, even if they're not practicing. They're still motivated by it, right? So,
isn't that
that's the thing.
Pascal Muslim?
I'm sorry?
Isn't that like a Pascal Muslim?
Yeah, Pascal's greater than Muslim?
Yeah, just in case.
Yeah. I think that's pretty much what they are. And of course, there's going to be some religious Muslims that also act that way too. And, just because someone's not religious or someone doesn't show religiosity or someone doesn't know all of the detailed fiqh rulings that, us non-Muslims and ex-Muslims seems to know more about than those guys, that doesn't mean they're not motivated by Islam, right? Like, just because, some guys that went to join ISIS had a Islam for Dummies book, does that mean they're not Muslim? No. Does that mean they're not motivated by Islam? No. They're motivated by Islam. They want to learn more. They want to teach. They probably want to give it to the new converts in ISIS, right? I mean, this is the reason. Just because they bought a book called Islam for Dummies, that doesn't mean you can say they're not Muslim, which is what moderate Muslims want to do. They want to distance themselves. Obviously they want to distance themselves from ISIS. So they're like saying, oh, look, they bought an Islam for Dummies book. But no, that actually shows they're motivated about Islam. They want to learn about Islam and they want to teach it to others, right? Not to mention the fact that the highest, leadership positions in ISIS are like people that are fluent in Arabic and know the Quran and Sunnah inside out and can defeat any moderate Muslim in a debate on Islam. So you can't say it's nothing to do with Islam, right?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, you're obviously aware of a guy called Christian Prince. What do you think of him?
Actually, no, I haven't heard of him.
Oh, okay. It'd be worth looking online. From what everybody tells me, and I listened a little bit, he's quite knowledgeable on the Quran and the Hadith, and he goes into it quite deeply. He speaks Arabic fluently. I believe he's a Arab Christian.
Okay, I see.
And I was just listening to one of his hangouts, etc. And he had all these commenters, and they're going, yeah, the Arab Christians are the ones that know the Quran the best because obviously they've been under pressure, and so they've gone to go and learn all of these sort of things, and they feel they are the best people to debate or challenge, Muslims.
That's true.
Yeah.
I've heard that as well. Yeah, that the Arabic Christians know a lot about Islam. They tend to know the detailed rulings, unlike Western non-Muslims.
I like this. Have you seen this Brother Rashid channel, Al Haya? They are Christians, but they are kind of funny in Arabic.
Yes.
Yeah. So, what was I going to ask you? Question just escaped me for a moment. You guys can talk for a moment. There was something I was going to ask you now. Okay. So one of the things I was going to ask you. So, how is Islam seen in Canada as opposed to, for example, here in the UK? Because obviously people over here, there's some people that think it's all fine, but I get the increasing sense over here that the general public does not view Islam in a positive light in any sense. If you go and speak to a man in the street that's going to really air their views, they're not going to speak positively of Islam. What is it like there?
No, it's not like that here. Not at all. I don't think we have some of the most the problems that you guys have in UK with like entire streets being dominated by Salafis and people going around in niqab like very often seeing niqabis and entire areas dominated by like Muslim shops and Muslim owners and kind of like the Sharia policing that I've heard about that kind of happens in some areas, or at least not official policing, but then like intimidation towards women that are dressed in a certain way. I've heard about some of these things happen in the UK. We don't have anything like that over here. For the most part, thankfully, maybe because we're physically separated and we can have more control over the immigration process. We don't have a large number of niqabis here. It's quite a small minority. I'd say probably 1% to 2% of people wear niqab here. Like, if I'm going out in the street, maybe once every few days, maybe once a week, maybe not even once a week, I might see someone in niqab. Muslims here are well integrated. They tend to work in good positions in society and, like in IT and in a little bit less in banking because of the Wal Haram issue, but like the, doctors and lawyers and all throughout the community. The non-Muslim community here is very tolerant, very loving, very accepting of everybody. And we haven't faced, some of these issues that you guys are facing. So it's not like that. Like there are people that are kind of like hostile to Muslims, but they're kind of shunned by the majority, as far as I can tell. And if they're not shunned, like if there's like another Trump-style uprising coming up in Canada, like I'm not aware of it because I'm not in those groups per se. And I'm not, I don't associate myself with those type of people per se, so I wouldn't even really know, because like the whole Trump thing, the whole populist government, the whole xenophobia, the whole Brexit, all that stuff, I don't think even liberals even saw it coming. It just came all of a sudden, right, out of the blue. So I think there's a little bit of a communication gap between the left and right, and in general, us humans, we tend to want to surround ourselves with like-minded individuals. We don't want to step outside of an echo chamber or the bubbles. And so sometimes it just creeps up on you. I mean, there was a big kerfuffle with the wall C-17 or whatever, the wall condemning Islamophobia motion. And, a lot of people went completely nuts, especially the Christian right. They went completely nuts over this motion. So first of all, people thought it was a law condemning Islamophobia, meaning like anyone that criticizes Islam can go to jail. And of course, I would be up in arms. Everybody should be up in arms as to any sort of, policing on free thought and the ability to have a difference of opinion on. But the ex-Muslim community, for the most part, from what I can tell, was okay with the thing because it was mainly condemning Islamophobia in the sense of anti-Muslim bigotry. the wording of the bill, it shouldn't have the motion. Sorry, it wasn't a bill, it was a motion. Sorry, was it a motion? Yeah, it was a motion, not a bill. So it was just a motion to condemn Islamophobia, because there was like 3 guys that got killed in a mosque. Some guy went inside the mosque and shot them up. So, you know, because of that, they made this motion, and it was, honestly speaking, it was nothing. It was just condemning what happened, and you know, condemning any sort of hate speech against Muslims, which I'm against hate speech against Muslims too, right? I'm all for criticizing Islam, but not to demonize this particular group. And you know, sometimes that can be challenging, because where do you draw the line, especially when that group has certain problematic characteristics and values that go against, you know, let's say your more tolerant values of the larger society, right? So it can be challenging, but I am against anti-Muslim bigotry. But I'm not against, I hate that word Islamophobia, because it conflates anti-Muslim bigotry with criticism of Islam. And Islam deserves to be criticized or critiqued or whatever, because it's an idea, right? It's just like anything else, any other idea, right?
So what would
well, can I ask, are you in Canada or in the US?
I'm in Canada.
Okay.
What would you consider anti-Muslim bigotry or quote hate speech? What would that be for you?
So an example of that would be like trying to make it seem that the Muslim community is a bunch of rapists or a bunch of like jihadists that want to go and kill everybody, or to say that Muslims.
Oops.
We've lost you.
Oops.
Either you've dropped or you've muted. Okay.
Are like, you know, did I get cut off for a second?
You just your signal just dropped. So just repeat what you said there after you said. People try to demonize the community.
The point I was trying to make was to try to like make it seem, because you know, obviously there's some kind of bad ideas in the Muslim community. You know, anti-women sometimes, or you know, most Muslims are against homosexuality or whatever. But trying to scaremonger, and Muslims are like, you know, like ready to like, you know, burst into like action and chop off people's heads or something, or they need to be put in jail. Like there's a page online which someone, an ex-Muslim I know, was actually following, that was like trying to say like, you know, Muslims are a bunch of rapists and they're here to take our jobs and this and that, and you know, we should, like this page was actually calling for like putting Muslims in jail, like all Muslims. Like I was shocked, right? When I'm like, this is crazy. Like not all Muslims are the same. Not all people follow Islam the same way. The majority of people I know, anyways, in Canada, they're very moderate in the sense of they don't do half the stuff or believe half the stuff. They're probably against Sharia, just like I am, but they still subscribe to Islam, and somehow they convince themselves that they can do that, which I would disagree with. But yeah, that's what I consider anti-Muslim bigotry.
Yes, so I would agree. So you'd consider that a bit like the KKK. But again, most critics, as you're probably aware, most critics that have got some self-respect and integrity never say all Muslims or the entire community. I would always say some Muslims, or a majority, or a subset, or depending on what I'm talking about. And I think most would say the same. So anybody who says all Muslims, clearly I think we would all agree they just don't know all Muslims. So where you could say something.
Go ahead.
You could generalize where you say all Muslims believe in Muhammad. I mean, that's clearly a true statement.
Yes.
But further than that, then you'd have to sort of subdivide them, because not all Muslims will follow Muhammad's example, or they will cherry pick parts of the example, or they will make it sound different. And so, you know, from there on down, basically, you know, all Muslims are not the same.
And I do think, and I do feel that the Muslim community is reforming itself, as hard as it is to reform Islam, because Islam is perfect and all that nonsense. The Muslim community is making changes, and the way they're doing it is in a funny way. Like the way they're doing it is because they can't like officially come out and say, oh, Islam is bad, so I want to change it. So what they're doing is they're trying to reinterpret the text in a way that's more in line with like modern secular values. For example, you know, there's like a bunch of people now trying to say that Aisha wasn't 6 when she got married and 9 when the marriage was consummated. Yes. It's like, oh yeah, she's 18, right? and you're laughing because, well, first of all, nobody had an issue with her being a little girl all this time, and second of all, it just doesn't fit with the narratives, right? With the hadith literature and with the story, and it doesn't fit. But that's kind of like the way they're reforming it. And then you have people like Hamza Yusuf, and so there's kind of like a split in the community, in the Sunni community. There's Sufis and then there's Salafis. By Sufis, I don't mean only Sufis, but basically anybody that follows a madhab. They call themselves traditional Muslims, or that's just the word they came up with, and they may have different names for it. And to counter that, you have the Salafis, who basically they don't go by any madhab, any school of thought, like Hanafi, Shafi, Hanbali, or Maliki. For the most part, they just directly interpret the Quran and Sunnah, and then that's how you have Wahhabism, Ibn Taymiyyah, Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab. So there's kind of two factions. The Salafi community are the ones that they want to stick directly black and white to the texts. And these are the guys who are the most dangerous in the world and the worst for the world, because they don't care how good it sounds or how bad it sounds. The Prophet said, you got to kill apostates. We got to kill apostates. You guys and your kuffar laws, you just want to be like the kuffar. You just want to please the kuffar. You don't want to kill the apostates. But the Prophet said, if he changes his religion, kill him. Like, that's how they are, right? Then you have the Sufis, or like I said, whatever they want to call themselves, traditional Muslims. They have this body of text behind them that goes for 1400 years. And they have this scholarly chains of narration. So they have this. So basically, the non-Salafis, the let's call them Sufis, for lack of a better term, the traditionalists, they have reformed Islam already, and they're continuing to do it because they appeal to authority, right? So like Hamza Yusuf, for example, or for example, even like say Omar Suleiman, he has a video, 2-hour or 3-hour video on slavery, right? And he goes on, and I was watching this video because a friend sent it to me, and he's like, you can't sleep with a slave if she's married. You can't separate a husband and wife slave. You have to ask her for permission before you fuck her. And I'm like, what? Like, where did all this come from, right? And he didn't use that word, but anyways, I apologize. I was getting carried away. So I'm like, where did all these rules come from? I've never heard any of this before, right? And of course, he didn't come up with any basis for it, but like, there's a whole bunch of Islamic fiqh rulings that have been kind of built up over the years, and they always have to somehow tie it back to what Muhammad said. But like, honestly speaking, it is reformed in a sense. Like, of course, they still believe that like homosexuals should be killed if you have 4 witnesses of intercourse and all that, and adulterers. However, they will probably say we don't need to implement that today. Like Hamza Yusuf has actually come out and said, I would not apply hudud punishment in today's world because the world is so different than the world that the Prophet used to be in. So he'll outright say it. And because of that, ISIS will say he's a kafir. Look, he's rejecting the commands of Allah. He's not ruling by the commands of Allah, as the Quran says. So he's an apostate. He's a murtad. He should be killed. So of course there's going to be like a conflict between these ultra Salafis and these, as they call themselves, or traditionalists, even though they're kind of reforming the religion. But I do think the Muslim community is slowly reforming because, putting these things in the limelight, they're kind of troubling. Not kind of, they're quite troubling, right? Some of these traditional Islamic values. So I think that's how the reform is happening.
Yeah, I think a lot of this would go away.
Quran 4:24 allows a man to have sex with a married slave. It's in the Quran, 4:24.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? Like, how do they justify this? I don't know. Like, I don't even know what the basis is for these so-called rules about you can't sleep with a married slave. And yeah, it doesn't make sense. I agree with you. I don't know where it's coming from.
And the problem with this is all to make it appear, like you say, more acceptable to Western civilization. All they really need to do, they don't need to go through all these hoops. All they need to do is say, do you know what? The Quran and Muhammad were the 7th century. We've moved on from there. So whatever happened then, yeah, it's not great. We wouldn't do that today. And it was for the 7th century. End of problems. But of course, they can't do this.
Yeah.
That would just
if you
solve
need something on Islamophobia, my favorite thing is always to go and say, well, we know what Islam is. This is the political ideology, but a phobia is a malfunction of the brain. So Islamophobia would be that Islam is a malfunction of the brain. I don't think you want that.
But is it always malfunction? I mean, there are phobias that are very beneficial from an evolutionary perspective. So like,
phobia is always something, it's an irrational fear.
Yeah, but if you have a phobia against snakes, for example, is that always
No. The justified hesitancy or something that you sense danger, or there's a phobia. In other words, if you see anything that resembles a snake, then you suddenly start running away, or you start screaming, or you start acting irrationally. That's the difference.
Well, that's the thing, right? They're using Islamophobia as a slur. They're saying, "Oh, you guys are allergic to Islam. You're Islamophobes," because what they're trying to say is that you have an irrational fear of Islamic law. But the reality is, it's not irrational. If I was in a Muslim country, I would be dead.
Exactly.
So
No,
is it
there's a lot of things.
irrational?
No, but I make fun of exactly what I used to make fun of, but it's a malfunction of the brain. So are you telling me that Islam is a malfunction of the brain? And this then gets them into a spin because they don't understand what they're just doing.
And whenever I challenge them in the park, of course, and point out that no Muslim country is where most of us would want to live, maybe they do, but I don't even think they would, then the response is always, well, they're just not implementing it correctly. If they just did it, quote, my way or, quote, the proper way, then we'd have a great society.
Yeah, it's a no true Scotsman fallacy again, right? If only everyone would wake up for Fajr, then Palestine would conquer Israel, and the world would be different, and this and that, and all that nonsense. But like another thing about Islamophobia, if Islamophobia exists, then shouldn't Islamophilia exist as well?
Yeah,
like like
exactly.
pedophilia, Islamophilia.
Yeah, somebody has.
And by the way, in Malaysia, for example, while we're on this, do you know that they have prohibited the tradition of waking up people 3 o'clock in the morning during Ramadan, because they used to run through the streets and make a lot of noise to wake everybody up so that you can eat before the sun comes up. And now they've stopped it. So this is also a form of reform.
Yeah. I didn't know about that. I don't know if that's not actually part of the religion per se, but that's a cultural practice that has appeared.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
This is how it gets implemented. Ace, yeah, I'm sure Ace can.
It's a bidah.
It's a bidah. In Egypt, they have suhur drums. They go drumming to the street, and people give them donations because that's how the society kind of sticks together.
I know
so you have suhur drums.
Limited time, Abdullah. So I want to just get a question, and it's been waiting. Somebody asked a question. It was more of a statement, and you can comment. Abdullah, and he's not actually a Muslim, I don't think, but he says, Abdullah, I strongly disagree with you using Quran 53, 2-12 as Quranic justification for the validity of hadith, when only a few lines down, there are now edited satanic verses. 2-12 is Muhammad making excuses.
Okay, the same fellow actually left a comment on my YouTube as well. Okay. I'm guessing he's a Quranist and he's against hadith. So that's another way of reforming Islam, is to edit out the hadith and make the Quran have no context anymore. I honestly I don't really care about whether hadith is justified or not. The reason I use hadith to discuss with Sunni Muslims is because that's what I used to believe, and they believe it's justified. I don't really need to justify whether hadith is. I mean, if you don't believe in hadith, all the power to you, my friend. That's what I'll say.
But then, of course, many of the things that a certain number of Muslims take, is not to be found in the Quran, like the number of times you pray, etc. And Stops has mentioned this many times. So if you ditch the hadith, then many of your day-to-day things, if you are, fairly staunch practicing Muslim, don't have a foundation.
Exactly. Yeah. So I like I said, the way I was following Islam, I felt like hadith was an integral part of the religion. But if people don't want to follow the hadith, they only want to follow the Quran, does that mean now suddenly the Quran is a word of God and it's miraculous? I haven't been able to be convinced by anybody that doesn't believe in hadith that the Quran has a solid basis for belief in it. So, I mean, it's up to you. If you want to believe in the Quran by itself, all the power to you. I personally don't think that's what Islam is supposed to be. But hey, maybe you're right and maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
So final question, because I know you have to go and I want to respect your time. What do you say, because we've had a chat about this recently, but what would be your thought on the way to approach people and have a conversation to get them A, thinking, B, maybe critical thinking, or maybe considering whether Islam is in fact true? What would be what is your approach, or what have you found to be effective when you speak to Muslims?
Right. So this is something that I feel like you can't kind of convince people, and people that are open-minded and willing to dialogue are people that are open-minded, and people that are not. Like, people come and they want to talk to you sometimes, and the only reason they're talking to you is just to convince you. they're actually not interested in being convinced or in reconsidering the position. So I try my best. Like I did have a discussion with a friend who I hadn't seen in many, many years. And this guy was a big influence on me as a Muslim. And he's someone I looked up to a lot, like a Bengali friend of mine. And I asked him, I said, like, I don't see any reason to believe in the Quran. And he was like, yeah, but that's your choice. You know, people choose if they want to believe in God or not. And people choose if they want to follow the religion of God. And I'm like, well, hold on a second. Are you telling me there's no rational basis to believe in the Quran? Is that what you're saying? He's like, no, I'm not saying that. He's like, I'm saying that, you know, you have to choose it, right? I'm like, okay, fine. So then if that's the case, right, then let's say two people come to you. And, you know, I think you have to just kind of think it through, right? And street epistemology is one way of kind of getting people, this is where I learned it from, you know, getting people to kind of think about it a little bit more and like asking them like, well, if two people came to you, one of them was, and I'm sure you're well aware of this, Rob, because you're on Speaker's Corner, and you know, one guy's a Hindu, one guy's a Muslim, and both of them come to you and say, well, this book is from God. How do you know which is the true one? And then I said, well, isn't it true that the very basis for believing in God, like him sending a book, by its very nature is something that you can be completely fooled by, meaning someone can completely lie to you and say this book is from God, and you'd have to investigate it to know, right? Because how else would you know if the method of delivery is someone telling you, well, then God's actually given us a method that's very flawed in the sense of like you have to investigate it, right? You can't just know just from the fact that the guy told you. So I think kind of thinking through these kind of things and kind of discussing in that sense, not, you know, my mistake is I used to tell people, this is my mistake. People used to ask me, let's have a talk, and I'd be like, okay. And then they'd be like, why you don't believe, right? And I'd be like, well, yeah, this Quran is wrong on this and wrong on this and wrong on this. And I just give them a bunch of reasons why the Quran's wrong. And they're like, okay, bye. And that was the end of it. But now I don't do that anymore. I'd rather ask them to explain to me why they believe in the Quran. And then that actually has, you end up having a much better conversation, because then you can try to understand where they're coming from. And you can put the burden of proof on them, and they can explain to you, well, the Quran is amazing because of so. And you're like, okay, yeah, but what about this? And then, you know, you have a much better conversation. Sometimes they get pissed off, though, when you do that. If you tell them, like, you know, it happens sometimes. People say, you tell me why you don't believe. And you'll be like, well, you tell me why you believe. And like, hey, that's not fair. You're asking a question to a question. You answer first, right? They think like you're trying to trick them or something, but it's not a trick. Like it's like serious. It's like, you tell me why you believe, and let's discuss that, right?
I mean, you can always throw it back. So what you could do if you don't want to, and Stops is obviously quite solid on that point, is so you just say there's no good reasons and evidence. Can you provide me some? So you've given an answer, but you've like asked the question in your answer. And now they have to provide it, because that way, because otherwise, yes, they're going to feel like you're not prepared to answer a question. Hey, I've answered your question. No good reasons and evidence. Can you provide me some? Boom. Now the ball's back in their court.
That's good. I like that.
Yeah. I do want to respect your time. Thank you again so much. I know you've got to go back to work, so I appreciate it. We'll try and do one where we can have you on for 2 hours. We can have a much longer chat, or if you're doing another one, we're happy to come on at different times of the day. So again, it's great to hear from you. I hope you keep well. Thank you for your time, and I'm sure we'll speak to you again soon.
All right. Thank you so much. Well, I'll be in touch. Hey, guys, it was wonderful, Abu and Stops and Rob. Thanks for having me again. I do enjoy these discussions. I think it's quite fantastic when you have, you know, like-minded people together and be able to kind of discuss some of the things that are going on in the community and the world, and, you know, why people believe and don't believe. I think this is a fantastic thing to do. So keep it up. Keep up the good work, and I'll catch you guys maybe next week or something.
Yep, sounds great. Thanks so much.
Brilliant.
Okay, all the best, guys.
And remind me to ask him one thing next time. Did he ever, or has he ever regretted going public? Because this is an interesting question, I think.
You know what? I can answer you right now. I'm not in a, yeah, I'm still here. Okay, so have I ever regretted going public?
Yes.
Okay, so the answer is, okay, but here's the thing. The one thing I wish I could have done differently, and this is what one of my friends is doing now, is I kind of wish I could have talked to at least my brother one-on-one before going public, because I would have had a much better chance of being able to reach him. Although, frankly speaking, based on his personality and his whole, like, I don't want to talk about a thing, I have a feeling he wouldn't have discussed with me even then. He would have probably just said, go talk to a sheikh, which is what he told me to do. He told me, go talk to the imam. And that was it. He didn't want to involve himself, which is kind of sad, because he became Muslim because of me. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm the one that led him to Islam. So how is it that you can have an open mind and go to Islam, yet you shut your mind down when you become Muslim and you say, now I'm done thinking? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's ironic that the very open-mindedness that you had that brought you to the religion, you just throw that in the garbage, and now you say, okay, now I'm done. This is a final decision I made now for the rest of my life, no matter what evidence comes to me. So that was kind of sad to me. But other than that, you know, before I made the videos, I had the blog, and the blog was there, and nobody threatened me. It's only when I made the videos that people started threatening me. So clearly, the videos are more of a threat, I guess, to some people in the Muslim community. So that's the only thing, right? But I don't regret it one single bit. I'm just trying to keep my head up. You know, I think the more people that come public, and the more people that can come out as public ex-Muslims, I feel like even more people will do so, and even more people will do so. You can't kill everybody. You know what I mean? You can't threaten everybody, and you can't shut up everybody if people keep standing up and saying, no, I'm not going to be intimidated. I don't care about, you know, your stupid religion trying to threaten me. I'm going to do what's right for the world. And, you know, frankly, there's going to come a point in time where I don't need to talk about Islam anymore. And you know what? I'll talk about something else that's like more interesting, you know, science or philosophy or music or something that actually, you know, matters more than just religious, you know, just religious nonsense that, you know, I really do want to move on past the whole, you know, talking about religion thing. You know, I thought about, should I do like a master's or should I study, you know, Islam? And I'm like, why would I want to waste more time on this religion I've already wasted? You know what? People that are open-minded, they're going to believe me, or they're going to think about what I'm saying. People that are closed-minded, they don't care anyways. Even if I had a PhD, they still wouldn't care. You know, it's not going to make a difference to them. So I'm actually trying to study philosophy and learn, you know, something useful, right? Something that'll help me in my thinking process and all that. So stops. No, I don't regret it one single bit. It could have been much worse. Like I said, my wife could have left me. That was one thing I was kind of worried about in the beginning. I wasn't sure how she would balance the whole Islamic ruling of, you know, she's not allowed to be with a non-Muslim man versus, you know, destroying her entire family over this religion, right? So many people I know, the wife decided to break up with them, right? So unfortunately, it could have gone the other way, but it's just my personality. You know, like if you remember last time we talked about free will, I truly believe the way I am, because of my genetics, because of my environment, because of my upbringing and my experiences in life, led me to be the open person that I am. And I think, unfortunately, the sad reality is, even if my wife would have left me, I don't think I could have kept quiet, because I feel like people need to know. I spent like a huge chunk of my life on this thing, right? And I don't want other people to do the same if it's not true. Like I don't want another person to waste their entire life, you know, every decision they make in their life, every thought that you have, you know, even when you're walking, you have to think, do I like, a funny example is, let's say you're like, you know, you're about to pray, or you said your prayers or something, and before you pray, you have to wash, right? But like, if you fart, then you lose your wudu, and you have to wash again before you can pray. So as a Muslim, you got to be even thinking before you fart, like, can I fart right now, or do I have to pray first, right? So it's like, every single thing, you know, in your life has to be, you have to look at it from the perspective of Islam, and that's a huge cost, right? Like, can I fart or not? Even that, to that level, right? So it's like, you know, it's so sad. Like, I had a friend email me, and it's like, remember that blog you had? And he's like, I know we haven't talked to you in a long time, and I know you're not Muslim anymore, but you posted on your blog that Bitcoin is halal, you know, because of this and this and this. And he's like, could you please remove it? Because I emailed the sheikh. You know, this guy was feeling guilty that he was involved in Bitcoin, which is this digital currency that came out. And he emailed the sheikh, and the sheikh was like, he's like, sheikh, you know, my friend, he put your fatwa online that you said Bitcoin looks like it might be legit. And do you agree with this? And the sheikh was like, no, because Bitcoin is not accepted as a currency anywhere by any government yet. So according to the sheikh, he would consider halal if like the Japanese government or the whatever, some government decided to allow it. Like, it's such a ridiculous thing.
Yeah, they just make stuff up as they go along. In parting, I would say to you, Abdullah, keep doing what you're doing, because I think you're the voice for many of those quiet Muslims who wish they could come out and they couldn't. So I appreciate you want to move on, but I think sometimes people like yourselves are the voice that many people out there in the world who are frightened, who are in situations that they only dream they could be in your situation, wish. And so you are saying what they are thinking. And so from that perspective, you are the most important people out there, because the Sam Harris's, Richard Dawkins, and myself and other people who are critics are not going to be taken as seriously. But people like you, I think, are the people that will make the change. And, you know, I hope that you'll keep doing it in whatever way, to the big degree or not, but you are a voice for those that don't have it. And an important,
he's a Zionist. He's a Zionist being paid to make Islam look bad.
Okay, now that I'm caught, I have to go. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I also want to add this, that I also kind of get feeling like to argue against Islam is a bit like arguing against the slowest kid in the class. But in a one way, so I'm more interested in science, I'm more interested in philosophy and things like that, and even technology. But the thing is, if you think about making a cost-benefit analysis, what's the best way, best use of your time? If you think about how many Muslims there are in the world, and how much progress you can do just by deconverting a huge number of Muslims, arguing against Islam is probably one of the most time efficient, the most efficient ways you can spend your time. You see what I'm saying?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I do agree with you, and this is why I'm going to keep doing it. And again, thank you guys so much, and hopefully next week or the week after I'll be on the channel again.
Thanks a lot again. Take care, Abdullah.
Take care. Bye.
Great stuff. It's always good to have something else. So those are the people, you know, because potential Muslims want to leave. They might get to think from an Harris or a Dawkins or whoever it might be. But the ex-Muslims, I think, are the real strength there. That especially those ones that know it, that were really in it deeply and can answer those questions. And that's where the doubt comes in. And that's where I think there's a voice for those people who silently wish they could make a change or have but can't say it. And so that's where Abdullah and obviously yourself, Abu, and many others are extremely valuable. So good. So again, thanks to Abdullah for that. Let's just see. So Ahmed, or is there anybody else in the chat that's a Muslim that wants to join the show? If so, we can arrange for that to happen. If anybody wants to have a conversation, I do want, when I have guests on, I don't want guests interrupted unless they specifically ask. So I won't invite other panelists on when we have a guest. You can post questions for that, but I do want to give the guest the majority of speaking time. That's why they've come here. But if now that we're in sort of open time, if there's anybody that wants to join, then let me know in the chat here, and you're welcome to do that. I just want to have a look here. So obviously we still have, unfortunately, at least one Muslim here who's, you know, hypnotized by one or two speakers in Speaker's Corner who think atheists get rinsed every week. You know, that sort of sadly childish view on things. But again, it's just a psychological thing. You know, it's easy for me to say, but you know, if you haven't had that education, you're going to talk in that way and think in that way, and nothing's going to change it. You know, because you can't physically have a fight with somebody. You like the verbal battle. You don't care whether it's true or false, as long as your man sounds like he's winning. And we all have a bias, and so therefore, you know, you're going to think your man won even if he didn't. And so, you know, that doesn't particularly impress me, and those are not sort of the people that I want to interact with. But again, everybody's different. Welcoming in Ansar. Good evening, sir. How are you?
Hello, Rob. Hello, mate. Sorry, I missed most of this show, actually. I had some other things that I was doing, but I've caught the last 10 minutes.
Yeah, no
very interesting.
You are being used by atheists. They are using you and your psychosocial problems to make you deeper into this filth.
We are brain raping you.
We are brain raping you.
Wow. I didn't know
you didn't catch the beginning of the show, but I read out some crazy comments. So I'll just bring it up for you again here, just for you. And so, because obviously there were a few comments from your video, but I did stress that most of the comments were positive. And again, I encourage you to go watch Ansar's video. and you'll see many people saying positive things. But I picked up a few, and here's Saracen's comment. So again, because you weren't here, obviously we were speaking about it in your absence. So there it is. I don't know if you remember any of that. Maybe that was more of an illusion or a dream.
We're taking advantage of you, raping you, silly. There you go.
Can you read that answer?
The rape.
Can you see it? Or
I find that hilarious.
Oh, you've got it.
I find that really hilarious. I mean, honestly, what can you say to a comment like that? I'm being intellectually raped because I'm not being rational or skeptical enough. I'm the most skeptical person I know. But fair enough. You guys are not being brainwashed or indoctrinated since birth. But yet you still believe the same thing you believed since the day you were born and were forced to believe since the day you were born. I just don't get how these people can think that that's the situation when it's the exact opposite.
Yeah, but obviously they think they are being critical. But it's a cognitive dissonance. And here's the thing, because somebody did ask me, and it was a good question actually. Well, you're saying the same thing, Rob. What makes you right and us not right? And of course, the relatively easy answer is because non-belief is the default position. Now, when I made that comment in one of the videos recently, again, it got misunderstood entirely as if I was saying that atheism was true. What I'm saying is the non-belief is the default position. So again, there's a lot of confusion with atheism, and it doesn't matter how many times you seemingly tell people, it's like it doesn't sort of stick in there, and they don't have enough time to rationalize it. So the default position is non-belief particularly in supernatural entities. So that's why we have, or I have, or all of us have that position, and that's why we can speak from that position, whereas you can't, because you're already believing, and you don't believe in all the other supernatural deities. So you are actually being an atheist to the other versions of gods out there, and we're just going one more. I mean, that's been said ad nauseum by many other better speakers than any of us here. But that's the reason why we can claim that and you can't. So again, an invitation here. So we have put out an invitation. Let me see. There's somebody here on Facebook that might want to join. Let me just see who that is. No, that was just a message to me.
Ali Dawa also ran away when I was remote controlling Ike. And I sent him off to speak to Ali Dawa, and after 2 questions, he just simply ran away. And
was that Ali Dawa?
Ali Dawa, yeah. Shabir acknowledged that he believes that ants can have a communication with human beings, and it's public, and Ali Dawa simply couldn't answer the question and ran. And literally ran. He turned around and says, no, I can't, and he ran away.
Yes, well, obviously he's not going to be able to answer those questions. He's sort of, in a sense.
Can ants remote control Ike?
Yes.
Oh.
All you need to do is put $500 on his Patreon account, and he will fly to Speaker's Corner, put some buds into his ear, and then you can remote control him.
Yeah, but can ants remote control him?
Absolutely. I mean, you heard it. Ants can control anybody. They can talk to you.
Okay.
According to Shabir, of course, and according
Allah
to the Quran. I mean, Allah, the owner of the Quran,
God knows,
has decreed ants can have a conversation with humans. There you go. So how can you doubt that?
Yeah, because I've had my suspicions, like sometimes I feel that ants are remote controlling Ike.
Yes. Okay. Back to reality. Yeah. So there is a video. Obviously, I'll keep it for next time now because we've kind of gone on quite long. I looked at different videos, and the reason I asked Abdullah about that is because there's a video with Paul speaking to somebody that apparently is a David Wood supporter or whatever the case is, and he, and I'm just fascinated that one would think when he speaks that he's articulate and has thought through these things, but then I listen to his version of morality and I'm like, holy crap, he's probably actually one of the more fundamental in terms of morality. The others either probably do say it, but do think it, but don't say it. But he's quite happy to say, and he said it to me, and then he said a few things on this video about like he would want Sharia enforced in this country and blasphemy to be outlawed. He wasn't quite clear on what the punishment would be. Would that just be that you get a £10 fine, or would there be something a lot more serious? And so, you know, those are the sort of things where I'm like, holy crap, here's a British convert who, by all other measures, is reasonably intelligent guy, and these are the moral views that he's holding. He's somehow taken on into his brain, because presumably, you know, our society is corrupted, and the only savior, and that's what Darren Hamza said, is Islam is the only savior. If we just ban all these bad things, then it'll all be okay. And this is obviously very difficult for me to even, you know, contemplate, but there you go. So let's just see if there's anything else in here. We might have an early show tonight unless somebody wants to join us.
Then I can get back to my video. Let's do it.
Let's just see before we do that. Okay, so final call here, unless anybody wants anything else anybody wants to say or anything like that, because we can keep the video for next week. But if there's anybody in the chat that wants to join us or has a question, now's your chance. Otherwise, we're going to
This is such a good point. You have to know Arabic to debunk Islam. No, you have to know German to debunk Nazis. This is exactly how stupid it is.
Yes, exactly. And maybe at some point I'll see if I can get Christian Prince on here. I don't know if he does guest appearances on other shows, etc. But I do want to call into him and just ask some questions anyway.
I just told you, $500 will do the trick.
What, for Christian Prince?
Well, I guess for him too, yeah.
No, online. He'll debate online. Did you all see the debate with Marshall and Christian Prince the other day?
No. Is that something that you can see?
Yeah, you what, mate, on the chat, one of our subscribers, you what, mate, he makes some really cool videos. He's uploaded one of Christian Prince versus Marshall on a phone call, and it's almost as bad as you and Stops versus Marshall, almost as bad as that, because Prince is quite a brutal guy when it comes down to it, and he's very intelligent and sharp as well, and it was hilarious. You have to watch it. Check out you what's page.
Yes, I need to spend more time watching videos. But then Rob, he bombards me with all these brilliant things that you know, when you watch them, you think, oh my God, and then you get stuck into those, and then, you know, that's what you watch, instead of watching your subscriptions and what you're actually interested in.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Rob comes up with some really great stuff to keep us occupied. But that one, I don't know how I came across it, but honestly, it's hilarious. And we all know Marshall as well. And we all know Marshall, and he got a spanking. He really, really did.
Yeah, but you know, and it's the same. There was this other fella that went on there the other night. I happened to be on last night, I think it was. A young guy, Abu somebody or other, young guy like 20 odd. And it's a case of like the Dunning-Kruger effect, or the level of competency that one has, especially when you're young, you're brash. It's like you look in a mirror, you think you're a lion, and everybody else looks at you and they think you're a kitten. And so you've got this lion, you know, you're perceiving yourself as a lion and everybody else is perceiving you as a kitten. And, you know, it's only when we get a bit older, we look in the mirror and actually the lion sort of fades and go, actually, okay, I'm not quite the lion that I thought, or I'm more humble, let's put it that way at least. But when you're young,
realistic?
That's not the case. Realistic is another word for it. I don't know if you guys have you heard of, do you know the 4 levels of competency? Have you ever heard of that?
Of course, yeah.
You know it, obviously, yeah.
No, I'm afraid I'm ignorant to that, but I'd love to hear about it.
Just very briefly, so there's 4 levels of competency. It starts out at the bottom level, which is unconscious incompetence, which is essentially you don't know what you don't know. So when you're utterly incompetent in something, you just don't know how little you know. And that was the case last night with this young Muslim guy speaking to Christian Prince. I mean, he just he didn't realize it, and then, you know, etc. And then off he went. He disconnected from Skype and then came back on again, but really didn't have an answer. You know, it's like me going to debate Lawrence Krauss on cosmology. That would be kind of the scenario. And so that's
Craig
where you
tried it.
So who did?
Craig.
Yes, well, you know, he's got.
To be honest, I don't think Krauss is that bad at cosmology, but I see your point.
No, what I mean is he's obviously an expert and I'm not, and so he would say things and I'd be sitting there going, I don't know what he's talking about. But that's kind of what happened last night. So you started unconscious incompetence. The next level up is conscious incompetence. Now suddenly you're aware of your incompetence or your low level of expertise or the lack of knowledge you have. And that from, jumping that level is oftentimes quite a big thing. And then that takes some time, often some years, some experience, some introspection, internal thinking, what do I know and so forth, or what do I think I know and what do I actually know and so forth. And when you listen to experts, then you go, holy crap, I know that there's a lot that I don't know. And so that's the next level, which is conscious incompetence. And then the next level up is conscious competence. Now you are consciously aware of your expertise. And so whatever it may be, if you have a level of expertise in some field, then you now have conscious competence. You know that you have it. You think about it and you go, okay, I know X, Y, and Z. So that's oftentimes when you're in the process of becoming an expert, and when you are considered an expert, let's call it that, in the early stages of being considered an expert, and then you have this conscious competence. And then finally, the ultimate level is unconscious competence. And this is where you are because you've learned, because you're an expert and you've done it so long, whatever your field of expertise is, it feels so natural. You look around at the world and you go, why doesn't other people know this? And that's where the Dunning-Kruger effect comes in. So people who are unconsciously competent often underestimate how much expertise they have, because it seemingly comes naturally to them. They look out at the world and they go, why don't other people know these things? And of course, other people haven't studied. It's just it almost feels to people like second nature. And those are the people that are often then a lot more cautious about what they say. So, cosmologists won't go out and make, absolute statements about things. They might do if the ego kicks in once in a while, but, in hindsight, they wouldn't normally do it. And they certainly wouldn't do it at a cosmology conference. So they might say it to lay people for whatever reason, to hopefully get them to understand or whatever the case is. But normally experts will couch their opinions. Hey, this is what we think the best opinion is, but it could be that I'm wrong and there's other experts in the room and, we're still working on it and whatever. And that's the highest level. And curiously, unconscious competence and unconscious incompetence is where the inversion happens. So those people that are unconsciously incompetent think that they are actually either consciously or unconsciously competent, and it's like it's an inversion. They have unjustified certainty in their beliefs, which is extremely low, whereas of course the people that are experts in whatever the field is justifiably are more cautious about it. And you see this a lot. You see it in religion, but you see it in other fields as well. So we have people down the speaker's corner talking as if they have some expertise in any one of these fields. And when you listen, of course, and they open their mouth and they say things, and even with my basic understanding in cosmology, and then you listen to somebody like Phil, you go, these people are absolutely clueless, but they speak with a level of expertise which is completely unjustified. It's like me talking about, I don't know, rocket science. Yeah, I know how a rocket gets to the moon. And if I really had to go into the equations and all it takes, I'd be blown away. But it's that sort of thing where, the inversion. And because we have so many credulous viewers who have not studied any of this stuff, who follow their hero, whatever the case may be, or their brother, or whatever the case is, all they do is they hear it. They can't differentiate between conscious incompetence and unconscious competence. And so as long as you're following somebody and you're not critically thinking, then they will get taken along for the ride, so to speak. But that's where critical thinking comes in, and that's the huge difference between either unconscious incompetence or even conscious competence, conscious incompetence, and the competence side. So there's that difference, that you start to do the critical thinking as you go over to competence level. And so hopefully that's a brief enough. But there's those 4 levels, so you can always think about that and listen. And so as you hear people speak, because you'll notice a difference, either if you hear some expertise in a particular person's voice, but particularly if they couch their views, they don't come across with certainty. Hey, it is definitely this way. It will be something like, this is what the majority of scientists think, or this is what the majority opinion is, or this is where the evidence points. Those people generally have got a conscious awareness of either their level of competence or incompetence, but they're not unconsciously incompetent. That's the main thing. Unconsciously, the lowest level people will make absolute statements. And then as soon as somebody makes an absolute statement, you got to be careful.
Rob, as you know from the debates that you've seen me in, this is quite a big thing for me as well, because I'm quite popularly known as the I don't know guy, because I often get to a point, and I'm very happy to admit, that's where I don't know, or that's where I refuse to commit myself. And that's quite the opposite with a lot of theists, as you well know. So do you think that's a really, because I really agree with you about these 4 levels of competency. I'd never heard of it before, but it's very interesting, and as well as with the Dunning-Kruger explanation for it, it makes sense. It makes a lot of sense, you know, when you don't know.
There are studies that shows that people, like, the less you know about the subject, the more people tend to be more sure about it.
Yes, exactly.
I also think there are studies that...
That's what Rob was saying as well, because they go straight to absolutism, and that kind of shows that they actually haven't got the foggiest clue about the very basics, because anybody who does have the foggiest clue about the basics straight away loses the absolutism.
I also think that I have a vague memory that there was a study also about IQ, that people with high IQ tend to be more less sure. And that is like, I'm not sure about that last one, but I have a vague memory. Anyway, but this, I think this is very common in politics. So like politicians often get kind of, the more certain they are about themselves and their own ideas, the more votes they get.
Yeah, but
the
thing with this is all psychological, is because when somebody comes across as more sure, it gives you reassurance, because they're so invested in it. It psychologically impresses you that they know what they're talking about, because they're so emphatic and invested in it. Now that is just a psychological trick. At the end of the day, that's got nothing to do with whether something is reasonable to take to such extreme absolutes.
Yes, it's very you're spot on there with the level of certainty. Certainty, even misplaced certainty, wins over uncertainty very often, unless there's enough expertise or critical thinking going on. So when you have a certain person that doesn't have the knowledge but sounds certain, and you've got somebody, being less certain in the sense that they are couching their remarks with, this is the best information we have, etc., etc. And then you have people who are not thinking critically, but have a different methodology that they are using, which is, hey, I've got this preconceived idea, and I need to make the facts fit. And so whatever I do, I'll make the facts fit. And now theists will try everything they can to avoid this. But if you notice it, that's all they do. That's all they do. They have an endpoint in mind, and they try. Some of them, the more advanced ones, are trying to sound reasonable. But if you really look at it closely, they're not. They're not being reasonable in the sense that they're not using something like the scientific method. They have a preconceived idea, and now they're trying to subtly or unsubtly work towards that idea. And so that's where you'll see that sort of thing kicking in. But the more certain somebody is, if you're a viewer, and I've seen this, I've seen people being impressed with Ali Dawa because of his level of certainty, and because it's so simplistic, and they're not thinking. It sounds like he knows what he's talking about. And so that's like the hypnotic myth of certainty. And a lot of people get taken up. And that's where, again, the critical thinking is just not activated. Most people don't do it, but we are doing that because we're practicing, we're exercising it regularly. It's like going to a gym. If you do it once, you're not going to get muscles. Same with critical thinking. You might do it once when you have one conversation. The next time you get taken in. I saw that video, which I posted to, I think it was to Ansar and to other people, about this slick-talking Muslim fella converting this British teacher to Islam. And I mean, if you just listen to the arguments that he brought out, he would be stopped in his tracks by any of us. Even if we didn't have all the information, he would have been stopped in his tracks just with the assertions that he made. And this teacher was just nodding along. And at the end, this is the difference. This was an educated white British man. Could have been black, could have been whatever. It just happened to be that he was a white guy. And he accepted Islam because the critical thinking wasn't there. Whatever the guy said sounded reasonable to somebody whose critical thinking isn't finely tuned or doesn't have that information. And so as soon as certain claims are being made, the default position should be, hang on a moment, I'm not sure that's the case. Are you an expert in this? Where did you get your information? None of that happens for a lot of people. And so it's fascinating to watch. Otherwise, one would say educated people, because you can be educated and not have critical thinking. I mean, there's a lot of people like that are way more educated than all of us, but then you put them into a critical where you could actually implement critical thinking, and you'll see that they won't. And so there's a big difference between academic or intellect in the sense of like, I know a lot of information in my head, and somebody that's a skeptic or a critical thinker.
I think this is one thing I want to add, like both in like politics and religion, and also like in maybe other fields like like help yourself movement, or like narcissists are very self-assured, so they're they are very good at projecting this aura of being of certainty. So I think that's is one of the reasons why you have so many narcissists in politics, that they
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah,
Also,
yeah.
Rob, following on from what you just said there, I totally agree with that 100%. A more specific problem that we face is quite simply the fact that, I mean, even with this great distinction of people that really know what they're talking about compared to people that really don't, there's also this problem which we face, and that is that, I mean, let's be honest, even somebody who's a little bit cleverer than you can eventually make you look stupid if they so desire, because all they have to do is take you to a level of technicality where you have to end up saying, I don't know, or if you're not honest enough, then you will try to pretend to know things, and you would easily be exposed by someone who only knows one layer of explanation or one layer of thinking more than you, or even technical knowledge more than you. So it is quite easy for someone to just be a little bit smarter than you and make a fool out of you. And like that video you said with that Muslim guy converting the teacher, I mean, at the end of the day, all it is that guy was so gullible because he's not a critical thinker. He just doesn't use critical thinking at all. And the other guy, even if he doesn't, it didn't matter, because all he had to do was just explain things in a way that get packaged into an all-round nice sounding story, and that's enough for people who don't think critically. And it's a real shame that is the case, but I think that is a real problem that we have to face as well.
You're absolutely right. And you don't need to have expertise in a field to be critical thinking. That's my view anyway. You do not need to be a cosmologist or an evolutionary biologist, whatever the case is. You just need to have some basics in place in your brain, and go, so as soon as somebody makes a claim, that you don't know about, hey, I don't know if that's true. What evidence have you got to produce to make, to persuade me? And the evidence needs to scale with the claim. So if you've got those two things in your head, and particularly if somebody's now making a supernatural claim, well, that's like there already should be an alarm bell going off. Now the evidence and so forth needs to be, sky high. But if you just start with, hey, you've made a claim, can you produce some evidence? Can you give me some good reasons? I need to evaluate that because I don't know. But saying I don't know and I don't have expertise, I think from our point of view is a good thing, because we don't. And the worst thing I think we can do, if honesty is what we want, which I believe all of us want, and I don't believe that a number of theists, not all, some theists do think they want honesty, but I'm firmly convinced that some theists do not care about honesty at all. Their entire modus operandi is, let me try and make a fool of somebody, or let me try and present information that appears to validate my worldview. I do not care if it's true. As long as it seems true, that's good enough for me. But that I think is a strength for us, obviously, is that over time, the truth is the truth, and you're not going to get away from that. So you can dance around it. But when we go and look at information, when we look up things and you're talking nonsense, that will be revealed. Now, it may not be revealed immediately in the park or even in a conversation here, but between us, there's enough smart people, and I'm very fortunate. I've got people like the three of you and other people that I'm in groups with. So I'm not a smart guy, but I can ask questions of people that have done a lot of that information, and that's very helpful to me. And I think that's what we need, is a group of people that have expertise that you can ask, because we're not walking encyclopedias. And so we do want to have more information. I'm not going to become an evolutionary biologist. I'd rather become a cosmologist if I had a choice, because that's much more interesting to me. But if we're saying, hey, do you know what, I don't know, and produce your evidence, then I think those are two things that stand us in good stead, because we can keep saying it. So consistency is the key, because those people are not consistent, eventually it catches up with them. And of course, people have been exposed to Speaker's Corner. So when they say one thing and do another, it's very difficult, if you are inconsistent, to keep trying to be consistent all the time. At some point, you're going to lapse. And the moment you do, boom, then you're exposed. So if we are consistent, it's not something that we have to try and do. It's just a natural, hey, I'm going to be consistent. Truth is what is the most important thing to me. Whatever that is, then that's what I want to believe. But those people who don't, at some point, I believe they'll be caught out, because they'll just expose it themselves. It's not like we have to do a lot. They will just expose themselves. And so it's a case of just being consistent every week, or whenever we're having conversations, or whatever the case is. But the main takeaway is, you don't have to be an expert. You just have to ask certain questions, and your critical thinking alarm bell needs to go off when people are making, not just mundane claims, because that's the other thing. People can make claims, but there's a couple of things. Number one, it's the, how supernatural, or how extraordinary is the claim, then what is the impact on my life if I believe or don't believe the claim? And those two things together would give you pause. So if I said to you, I've got a dog at home in my backyard, that's a mundane claim. Your life is not going to change if it isn't. You've seen people who've got dogs in the backyard. You're likely to believe it. But if I said an invisible dragon in the backyard and he's telling me that if you don't follow certain rules, then you're going to go to dragon hell, now that's a completely different claim. And the impact on your life for believing or not believing is extremely high. And so that's where, an overwhelming amount of evidence and good reasons would be required for me to convince anybody else. But that's like you say, and so that's not happening for most people. But then again, most people in life are not doing what we're doing, and they've got expertise and they've got other stuff in their life, but that's where we can do the best we can to share that. I think if we did that on video all the time, even if we didn't know anything and we kept doing that, and Stops is very good at that as well, then that's a valuable thing, because it does, I think, impact people, especially that. And you're not going to change the dogmatic people anyway, but those people who are thinking about things and who are interested, who have come onto the internet for the first time or the 10th time, or maybe somebody like Zoe, for example, who's weighing up the options. Hopefully that will help people like that to put things in their brain that they may not have otherwise thought of doing or had access to, and now they can evaluate with a better critical outlook, I think would be my hope anyway. Cool. On that note, I don't know if there's anything else. I don't see anything else here, and Stops has been very quiet, so I'm sure he's busy doing other stuff there, which is good. So last quick option here. Anybody want to say anything else, either in the chat or in the panel? Because I think otherwise we'll do a slightly earlier one today. Oh, and that's the other thing. Sorry, I want to just get a sample from you guys. I really want to start at 8 o'clock. 7 o'clock is becoming very challenging for me, number one. Number two, we don't have as many viewers on, so we tend to get viewers later in the evening anyway. So Stops, answer, you're in my time zone, so hopefully it might be okay with you. Stops and Abu, how are you guys for starting an hour later? Would that be okay with you, or do you prefer the time we're at now, or what's your thoughts?
It doesn't matter for me.
Okay.
Not really. I'm just trying to think what happens in winter. If we go to winter time, if that's going to be unacceptably late, then I can't.
For you, yeah. So what we could do, I guess, is just say that it's always 8 o'clock, and I will put in there every single time. So when we go to winter, it's still 8 o'clock, and we just have in brackets, 9 p.m. UTC. So I'll work that out. So let's make it work for us. I'll put it into the title there so that everybody's aware. If they come late, that's their own thing. But if we can start consistently at the same time, then whether it's summer or winter, then I think that's good for us as panelists, and I'm sure our guests can accommodate that, and I'll put it in the chat. So
okay, so winter comes down 1 hour, right?
Now you got me. I always get confused with that one. I don't know why. The clocks go
backwards. So it's 1 hour earlier. So yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, because it's in summertime. Yeah. So, but for you, would it make a difference? Because we'll still be starting the same. Would it make a difference for you? It would, huh?
Well, if we go on for 4 hours, yes, because then I'm looking at 1, 2 o'clock in the morning.
No. But then again, obviously, I'm fine, especially if we're having a conversation, if people drop out, and let's say we've got a couple of Muslims on or whatever the case is, although that oftentimes gets you guys to stay as well. But at any time we can drop, as long as one of us is here, whoever's running the show. If I need to drop, then I can do that. But yeah, if we go on for 4, then we need to drop out whenever anybody wants to, really, as long as one of us is here to close it off or to stop it. So yeah, okay. So just a message then for everybody listening. From next week on, we'll do it at 8 p.m. UK time. I will put it into the title as well for those, and I'm sure people will forget because we've got our watches set. But from next week then, 8 p.m. UK time, and we'll keep it at 8 p.m. UK time going forward. I'll keep putting that into the title so that people remember that as well. And that gives me a little bit more time, and it also means we get more visitors and we can go on for a little bit longer. But again, Stops and other people, it's a bit later on their side. Obviously, they can leave a bit earlier, or we can finish earlier like we have tonight. So obviously, we're unusually early tonight compared to some of our chats. Thank you to all of you guys. Next week, Abu, did you want to do something? You did talk about Stoicism or anything. Is that something of interest to you? Otherwise, we will do a video review next week then.
Someone wanted me to talk about offensive jihad. But we can do a video next week.
Okay, cool.
And maybe the week after that we can talk about.
Okay, so before you go then, let me just see if I can actually find it here, because I want to give you this video so you guys get a chance at some point, hopefully, to watch it. I mean, you can always watch it on the fly if you like, but if you have watched it prior, then, you know, that sometimes that's helpful. So I'm just very quickly going to bring up here while I've still got you on the line so I can give it to you and to other people so that we've all got the same video that we can watch next week. I'm just trying to see if I can find it here.
We're still doing the hadith, aren't we?
Yes, yeah. So go for it. Abu, if you've got that.
Yes. So hadith number 3333 in Sahih al-Bukhari. Narrated Anas ibn Malik. The Prophet ﷺ said, Allah has appointed an angel in the womb, and the angel says, O Lord, a drop of discharge, i.e. semen. O Lord, a clot. O Lord, a piece of flesh. And then, if Allah wishes to complete the child's creation, the angel will say, O Lord, a male or a female. O Lord, wretched or blessed in religion. What will his livelihood be? What will his age be? The angel writes all this while the child is in the womb of its mother.
There goes free will.
That goes 3 wills one more time.
Yes. The good old free will. We've done that to death, haven't we? That's brilliant. I can't find it. I'll send you guys a link to the video that I'm considering doing for next week, and then just give me your thoughts. But I think it's an interesting one from a moral point of view. So thank you to all the panelists, as always. Thank you to Stops and Abu and Ansar. Thank you to you viewers, and we will see you next Friday for sure. We might do something in the week, who knows, but we'll certainly do next Friday, 8 p.m. UK time starts, and we'll be doing a video critique. So thank you to everybody, and good night for this one.
Bye.
Cheers.
Cheers. Bye.